All right, let's see what we got here. We're gonna do some Linux today. Do some Ansible. We are gonna do some Ansible. So, where are we at here? Pull this up. Make sure my streaming stuff looks normal. Make sure I got my microphone. All right, good. So, what are we doing today? We are gonna do some Linux. We're gonna do some Ansible, specifically automation type stuff in the enterprise. We're working through right now in the professional Linux users group. We're working through two different courses for people that want to do them. One's in Linux administration and one's in security engineering using Linux, right? Like the idea of being a security engineer in the Linux space. But I mean, I guess it would help you in security engineering anywhere, but it would probably be most useful in that space. I have a background in securing Linux systems for government projects for the last 20 years. I've done literally tens of thousands of them. But a lot of this comes and stems from a good understanding of automation. So we're going to do some automation stuff today. We're going to play with a tool called Ansible. I'm going to show you guys sometimes it's useful to like understand here's the basics of a thing first, right? Like if I was going to teach you how to play baseball, I'd be like, okay, this is a bat, this is a ball, this is a glove. You stand over here, I stand over here, we throw it back and forth a little bit, right? Like we would understand the basics, and that's what we're going to do with Ansible. We're going to touch all the pieces. We're going to see how we get it installed on the system. That's always one of the most important parts of a tool. We're going to see how to configure it for whatever environment you're in. That's also hugely important. And then we're just going to kind of work from there into the most basic of running plays through a mode called ad hoc. And then we're going to go and we're going to turn those ad hoc plays into what we call, we're going to go from ad hoc plays to more of a playbook. And playbooks are really where the cult of Ansible thrives the most, but that's what we're gonna do. So we're doing my labs here. Also, I need to start making some more of these labs because I think this gives you a lot of the fundamentals, and I think fundamentals are key, but this will also help you get into some of the other stuff as you go. So anyways, I'm gonna link the lab. If anybody wants to do the labs with me, I'll pin them over on the Twitch side, and I think I can pin them on, let's see if I can just do a pin command over on the YouTube side. I don't know if that'll pin automatically. I might have to click on it and pin the message, but that's fine. Either way, you've got the link there. And if you want to do the labs with me, feel free to hop in. What I would advise if you want to follow along and do the labs with me is start by getting a notepad open. So get something like Notepad++ up, something like this, and then just start getting ready for, hey, whatever notes we're going to take. If you wanted to say lab 1, right, boom, there's lab 1, and then whatever we're going to go over. I have a lot of these notes already up in our Discord, so if you want to use that, you can. They are all in, there's like a presentations page where I have all that stuff. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes to get in there. I'll also let you guys know Discord is free. We've got all kinds of stuff down there. We've got almost 4,000 people in there. So if you want to hop in the Discord, that's also something you're welcome to do. That's like the more persistent way of kind of hanging out. Obviously, I can be on stream, but I can only be on stream so much. Like the wife's coming home today, so I'm not going to be on stream later. I wanted to knock out some labs today. So how does this lab start? It says, welcome to Ansible. And you're doing the Prolog lab if you're doing this one with me. It says your team has decided they need a tool that they can use to control and operate the many servers you have in your environment. That's probably a good way to describe what Ansible does for you. You've been tasked with evaluating Ansible. Okay. So install Ansible and put a version output in a file called root version. So we're going to install the tool here. We're going to do that in a Ubuntu system, right? So this is Ubuntu. And then we're going to put the version that we have. So we're just going to say apt-y install Ansible. By the way, it adds a whole bunch of other packages. We might want to go look at that, like what other packages were installed, because maybe we have to report that up to security. Maybe we're in a air-gapped environment, and anything that we do that institutes a change has to be added to like a typically like a software doc that we keep of all the software that's running on our systems. So I'm adding all this Python stuff because, Ansible runs in Python. So what did I add to the system might be important to know, right, from a security standpoint. So we'll give it a second here. Come on, system. Sometimes the labs are a little slower. I guess Sunday mornings are good for a lot of people being on there, which is always fun. My favorite thing about Killer Coda, it's free, so you guys can just hop in there and do all the Linux you want without paying anything or having to build your own lab environment out. If you do need lab environments, we have lab environments with the Professional Linux Users Group. You just have to join and then go ask how to get in there. And people are using the labs for security and all kinds of other things that are kind of going on right now. So, all right. Getting messaged by people. Yeah. I did all my, when I got my CKA and my CKAD, I did all my practice in Killer Coda. I mean, I have a couple of clusters in my home lab as well, but, and actually they're running production workloads for me. This one runs all my production stuff, and that is actually, that's what this web page right here is run off of. Whoops, not that one, this one. Our Prolog lab. This is all locally run, and one of our guys, Treasure, builds up a Docker container. So all of our stuff in here about our group is run through that. So, okay, but that's not too important today. We got the system up. If I wanted to see what had just been installed, I could go to maybe just cat var log apt, and then should be in here something like a history.log, and then I would see these are the things that were installed today, and maybe I need to go grab those and turn those into a report or something of the versions of things that I've updated today. There's a bunch of things that you might want to do with it. But what's our Ansible version? We can see right here that we are on 2.16. It used to be 2.9, but I think it's updated now because we are on a newer version of Ubuntu, right? So since we're on 2404, instead of being on 2.9 like it used to be, now we're on Ansible 2.16. So we need to actually test these labs. This is good that I'm going through these labs because now we're going to test everything to make sure all the behaviors still work. And we'll just go ahead and throw that version in root version, and then that'll allow us to move forward with our lab. And the next thing is we're going to use the tool called Ansible Doc to see what, right, we didn't give it any options, the number of modules we have and any other information that we can see about the system. We're going to see it right here with Ansible Doc, right? Here's a bunch of other kind of like a help that comes out. So we're going to do Ansible Doc -- help, and we're going to get some information about what we can do. And then what I like to do is say Ansible Doc and then do a word count -L to see about how many modules and other things. Oh, we're up to 8,354 now. That's fun. So that's a whole lot of them. And you can just type that in by itself if you want. And then you go into an interactive prompt, and then you can just go look for things. Or I could / and say something like, I know there's some Cisco stuff in here, and here would be all the Cisco stuff, right? And then if I wanted to know about one of those, I would do Ansible Doc -S about one of those in specific. I don't know what Cisco ACI AEP is. I'm not sure what an AEP is in Cisco. I haven't been doing Cisco for a long time. But I should be able to drop that in right here and go read about what that does. It's an attachable entity profile. Probably something with like wireless or something, right? And then now, here's how I could use it. Here's the individual arguments that can be given to that module to change how it behaves. And I don't do anything with it, but I at least can go in and read about what these different things are in case I had a little block of code for AEP. I don't know, right? I had to drop it in. Much more common ones that we're going to run into are like setup. So let's go check setup. And setup, which is probably built-in setup now, but setup has some fact path and just some other things. Filter. I love filtering via setup. We'll use that. Gathering a subset so you don't have to gather all the information and keep it in Ansible. When you do gather facts, you're going to gather a bunch of information about servers. And one of the things that'll happen is that it'll almost be too much information sometimes. And as you get into tens of, thousands and tens of thousands of servers, every bit of memory starts to matter for Ansible, and everything's going to be further and further out as far as cost of time for applications and stuff. So anyways, so then there's a gather timeout even if we don't want it to spend too long gathering data, but that's okay. Then there's also a copy module. We love copy. Copy allows us to push files to remote locations. Copy is excellent for making sure that you've got something staged where it needs to go. Maybe you push things. I copy sometimes files like when I'm done. So I typically use template and Jinja, and I stamp things, and we'll see that later. But copy is a great way to get files on a system. You can set file permissions and ownership and do all these other things. So that's an excellent way to kind of use that. So we're going to hit check, and validation should be good. Let's see. Validation successful. It says, look at you learning Ansible. You solved this challenge. The whole challenge here was to get Ansible on the system. We want to make sure that we have Ansible. Well, that's kind of cool. Hold on. I got to check something. I just got an alert on my phone. I need to go look at something real quick. I'm looking at Ad Manager for something real quick. That's an interesting behavior. Fun. Okay. Anyways, I'll get busy over there if I go messing around with that. Hey, thanks for the follow. I missed follows earlier too, but hopefully this stuff's useful to you guys. The most important thing in the system here for us was we got Ansible on the system. We can check the version of Ansible. That's very important when we go to the docs. Often we'll go, like, there's online documentation, and they have a read the docs format. So if you guys are familiar, let's go just, I don't know, special variables is one that I like to look at for people. Now they have a very read the docs type. If you guys have ever seen this type of format, everything's on the left. Here's the special variables and what you can do with the system. Or maybe you just want to learn about Ansible and inventories. Here's some really good information about the system. I'm constantly telling you guys, if you do these labs in Killer Coda, the lab's an awesome way to show you the start. But then leaving this lab open and then opening something like that, any of the Ansible documentation, and going through and practicing some of that stuff can be really valuable. The labs will walk you through tasks, which is also awesome. It's good as an engineer to learn how to scratch your own itch. So that's the goal. Boris over on YouTube, yeah, hopefully this stuff's useful to you guys. That's the goal here. But that's the first lab. Just get Ansible installed on the system. That's the most important thing for us to start. And then now we're going to go into lab 2. So I'm going to set this. I'm going to unpin the other lab on the Twitch side. And I'll pin this new lab. So for anybody that wants to do the lab with me, there it is. And over on the YouTube side, I'll unpin that message. And I will pin the new one. So if you want to follow along again, there it all is. Fun stuff. Pin the message. All right. So this new lab is not going to be much more complex than the other one, but this is the crux of, guys, I tell you, as we're doing Ansible, right, we only have 2 nodes in this environment. We got a control plane and a node 01. But, man, I always use movie references. If you've ever seen the movie Predator, such a good movie, but Dutch is Arnold's character, and he says, that's Arnold Schwarzenegger, he says, if it can bleed, then we can kill it. So basically, if we can get this thing to bleed in any way, then we can kill it. And I'm going to tell you the same thing in automation tools. If I can make something work against one server, and I understand the inventory, I can make it work against all the servers. Now, there may be some proclivities between the servers, and we may have to deal with some of the, the paths not being there and other stuff, and then we got to start working in what I call painting with a wide brush to hit many servers and most instances and stuff. Sure. There's all kinds of stuff like that. But just strictly speaking, if I had 10 servers that were exactly the same, and I could run an Ansible playbook against one of them, and the other 9 are on the network and they're exactly the same build, I can run an Ansible playbook against all 10 of them if I understand my inventories. So inventories, just in general, think about it. if I said, hey, have you secured all the property? And you're like, yeah. And I go, how many buildings are on the property? And you're like, I don't know, somewhere between 1 or 2. And I'm like, there's 9 buildings on the fucking property, guys. How are you going to secure them if you don't even know where they all are? It's the same thing with this. I have a buddy many years ago, one of my security colleagues, who I was always running all the Linux and high performance compute for companies. And actually, he and I have worked together 3 times now. But I was always doing that, and he was always doing all the security. And he would always tell me, he's like, good security starts with a good inventory, because if you don't have a good inventory, you don't have any security. And I'm like, that's true of Ansible, and that's true of automation, and that's true of administration. If you don't know where all your servers are, if you can't tell me you have between 85 and 100 servers or 120, how are you going to tell me you're managing all of them? You're not, right? Like, that seems simple, but it's true. So let's get in and let's play with some stuff. Your team has decided they need a tool that they can use to control and operate the many servers you have in your environment. Many here is 2, but again, if I can hit 2, I can hit 1,000, right? You've been tasked with evaluating Ansible. You know that the inventory is one of the most important parts of the system's administration, so you want to get it right. Set up and complete the different inventory challenges in this lab. So it says to create an Ansible file called root hosts with the hosts in your network. And here's the hosts in your network: control plane and node 01. So if I just check Ansible's on the machine, good, and I do a PWD, I'm in root, I'm just going to VI root hosts. And in here, I have different formats I can use. If you're a YAML person, do YAML. I happen to like the INI format, so I'm going to call these servers, and I'm going to say control plane and node 01. Those are my 2 nodes, right? So I'm going to, we'll just cat root hosts, and those are my inventory pieces for this part of the lab. Right here, it shows that's the format. But what if I wanted to know a little more about that? What if I was like, well, okay, Scott, that's cool, you gave me those, but what if I wanted to generate, or like I pull them out of Satellite every morning, like Satellite is a source of truth for me in my environment. How do we do that, right? How would we know the format here? And what I would tell you is you say Ansible documentation and then inventory, right? And here's how to build your inventory in their little read the docs type syntax. So here's how to build your inventory. It's the simplest inventory is a single file with a list of host groups. You can make more complex inventories, but I'll tell you, I've mostly been able to do everything in my career with just something like a host file. So, okay, there's different inventory plugins and dynamic stuff, and there's a lot of other stuff you can do. I don't really mess with most of that. I generate an inventory, and that's my inventory for the day in the system. That's the way that I do things. But then they come down here, and here's the most basic format, basic INI format. You can also use YAML. That's perfectly acceptable, but I'm not as big of a fan of generating YAML because I'm not a programmer. That's not what I do. I can just pull stuff from an API and build these lists. It's super easy, right? That's all up. By the way, if you're like, hey, where do you have that? That's all up in our Discord. We have a bunch of, in the Ansible code section, we have a bunch of ways that people have done different stuff. I mean, you know, our Discord's almost 6 years old. We have so much stuff up there for Ansible. But let's get back to our tasks. We did this first when we built our inventory, and it says now verify connectivity to all hosts with the ping module and save that output to something. So we're going to use an Ansible command. We're just going to call Ansible by itself, not a playbook, not a task. We're just going to call an individual module, and we're going to go against servers, which is the name of the host group defined in this inventory. We're going to use the inventory root hosts, and we're going to use the module ping. Now, the module ping is not ICMP ping. ICMP ping is a layer 3 protocol that does echo requests and echo replies and all these other types of codes. We're not using that. Let's run this, and let's watch the ping pong happen in the systems. But I'm going to prove to you here in a second that that is not ICMP ping that's happening. We are connecting to the system via SSH. We're pushing over Python microcode. That microcode is simply pushing, it's actually just posting to the screen ping pong. And then this is actually a response from that in the return codes, in the return code and information that's being passed back. We can go and gather any of that information up into variables by registering it, but we're not doing all that right now. We'll get into that when we get into playbooks. Now I'm going to take that and I'm going to throw that into a value called ping check, and that would let us go forward in the lab. But let's go back here real quick and I'm going to, if you're doing the lab with me, let's do this command right here, and let's just add VVV. So 3 V's. We're going to go as verbose as we can here. Watch this. Look at all that blue. So what's happening here? This is now, if we ever need to really get in and debug, this is useful, because what's going to happen is we're going to see the SSH connection. We're going to see the test for Python, because Ansible needs Python on the remote machine to work. And then we're going to see it push over the microcode to a temporary location. Then we're going to go see it execute the microcode. So here we go. It talks about our local Ansible. It says that we try to connect over, so it's trying to find Etsy hosts if it passed, and it looks like it's just a basic INI plugin. It's just an INI file, and then it comes down here, and we connect over via SSH to control plane. So in this case, we're connecting to our own machine. We're testing to make sure we can connect. We're testing to make sure that Python works, and then we're pushing over the file and running it. That's what's all happening in there. Okay, this is how you would troubleshoot too, by the way, guys. I tell you all the time, if you just ran that and it worked, which it did, there's no reason to open up under the hood and look at this stuff. But if something breaks, or one node out of 100 doesn't work, I can come in here and look at it. I can also limit just down to that one node, right? And then I can go see what happened different, what behaved different on this node compared to all the other ones. Here's our good outputs here, right? But here's it actually, it discovered the Python interpreter of user bin Python 3, and then it used that to invocate and run its command for ping, right? It's just a ping pong tool. Hold on real quick. Core wired, not that you can't do. Yeah, so core wired, core wired rather, not Coro. I do try to run, I mean, obviously if I can, I'll run in a homogeneous environment where everything's the same. But I do use Ansible with some decisions, and professionally that's worked well for me. But I do try to limit the number of things that I run against to have, even if there's multiple things that happen, I try to make sure that I keep it around... it's kind of, if you guys have ever heard of the Pareto rule. Pareto rule is the 80-20 rule. I try to get to what I call painting with a wide brush. I try to hit most of the systems and then only have a few little one-offs that I have to go fix. Hey, Tay Crees, hopefully this stuff's useful to you. Thanks for the resubscription. You know, you guys can use your Prime anywhere. You choose to use it here. That's kind of cool. Also, you don't get any ads, so that's kind of fun. Like, anytime you guys subscribe anywhere, you don't get ads. I don't think people get ads on the YouTube unless they try to watch this later. So I think live YouTube doesn't have ads, but I could be wrong. And we're on Twitch and YouTube for people. Most of you guys know I keep my more persistent stuff over on YouTube. So we've done this lab a lot, but guys, this is super valuable to you to understand, hey, I've got a tool. If I have the inventory right, I can touch all the things in the environment. So we're good. Let's say now your team's going to be adding new servers. So we're going to add some servers to this inventory file that don't exist yet. And let's go try to do that. So vi root hosts. And in here, we've got some new hosts that we're going to add, right? And the new hosts we're going to add are these ones here. So I have servers still, and I'm going to paste in. Each of these is a host group. So this is a server's host group. Then we've got a test environment right here, test_env. Then we've got a prod environment, prod_env. And then we've got a non-prod environment, and it's going to inherit the children of servers and test_env. So servers and test_env right here could really have been dropped underneath this, but it's just an aggregation, right? So this one is an aggregation of that one. There's also a thing that I don't show you guys here, but if I had like a global variable for like the test environment or something, I can do this. I probably should add this to lab, but I could do like test env vars, and I could say something like mount equals, I don't know, dev or something like that. And then I could have, I would probably just do dev like that, and then I would call it later with the slash. But mount could be like, it's going to mount something from dev by default. And then we can override mount, but now mount is a variable for that, right? Well, anyway, so the point is we see all this, and that's cool. You know, we can, let's escape:\wq in our lab. But now we can go do some inventory commands to look at our inventory. So let's go list out our inventory. So Ansible inventory, Ansible-inventory, and the file that we want to use, the inventory file, is root hosts. Inside there are a bunch of defined host groups. And now when we list, we see host vars, and here's control plot, and it's got client. Control test gets these. Node01 prod gets this, and Node01 test gets this. And then down here we have all children, and then so this is all of them in the environment would have the children of ungrouped, non-prod, and prod. So it's all the environments. Non-prod will have the children of servers and test env, like we defined and saw earlier. Prod environment will just have these two hosts. It won't have children groups. Servers will equal hosts. Those were the original defined groups. And then test environment has these hosts. So everything that we know of and is defined is right here in the system. But I'm going to be honest. I'm not a big fan. Like YAML is fine when we're using it. I'm not a big fan of YAML being put into a file. By the way, this would be perfectly acceptable. Actually, I take it back. This is JSON, right? Is this JSON output right here? Yeah, this is JSON output, and that's important to note. You know it's JSON because there's all the commas in it, right? Anyways, so then we come over here, and I can look at this in a different format. There's multiple ways, 3 ways that I know of to output this. This is graph format. Some people like this. I think this is fine if you wanted to give this to management, because management can throw that up on a slide or something. But this is not something that I would try to use programmatically, because this isn't super nice programmatically. And then YAML output. This is YAML right here. YAML, you know, it's fine. It's just not. This is the only one. By the way, this is the only one of the outputs, of the 3 outputs here, that can be fed back into Ansible. So we started with root hosts. There's our INI format, and only this one, if you were to take this and put it on some other system, would be acceptable to input, because Ansible only takes inventories 2 ways: YAML or as INI. There's generated ones, but typically the generated ones come in as YAML as well. So there's that, but we don't really go into that here because that's a little more complex later. But look at you learning Ansible. You solved this challenge. You built an inventory file. You then used it to connect to servers, right? And then now you added additional servers that aren't really there yet. We could try, by the way, we could do those same commands from earlier against all the servers. It's just not going to work, right? Like we go do the ping right here, and then we say against all, right? We'll just hit all. But this screen's about to bleed because there's a bunch of systems that don't exist. Right? Those are all servers that very quickly control plot, those are all things that don't exist yet. We've defined them in our inventory. So this also brings up an interesting point. If something's defined but it's down, you'll know very quickly here. Let me show you guys something. And this is going to come up later if we get this far in the labs today. But every day I have something that runs in my home lab. And our home lab is the Professional Linux Users Group, like guest lab for everybody. And every day to Sandbox, we throw out if any of my nodes are unreachable. So here's all the logins that we had to a bunch of the different servers. People have been logging into the servers left and right. And then here's the unreachable systems. This poor Kafka box. I've just never finished building it, right? So that box is down. And then, but this gets output every day. And this comes from Ansible right here. By the way, this is also up in Ansible code. So if anybody needs the code for it, it's there for you guys, right? But we're not going to go into that too deep right now. Anyway, so all right, so that's the first 2. When we get into when we're talking about using the tool Ansible, the most important 2 things I think about doing any tool. I don't care if you tell me, Scott, I want to be a Python engineer. I want to write C code. I want to do whatever. I don't know what any of you guys want to do in your career. Most people that hang out with me for any amount of time want to do Linux, right? I would tell you the most important thing for using any tool is installing the tool. So like, let's say you want to write C code. I say, all right, well, do you have a compiler for C? Let's get that on your system. That would be the first one. Then the second one, in the case of like Ansible, would be like an inventory file, point at the right thing. For you guys that are doing some tool like that, it would be compiling it next, right? And then once you can get it to compile once, you can go modify things all the ways you want. it breaks sometimes, it doesn't break others, and then now you're in the hacking portion of engineering. And if you guys have ever heard me talk about it, engineering is just hacking with documentation and planning before and documentation after. That's all engineering is just hacking away at a system until we get the behaviors and the results we want. You can study first and maybe make that hacking time shorter. You can use your experience to make that hacking time shorter. But at the end of the day, we're just hacking away at systems until we get them to do the outputs that we want, right? So we've done those two things, the two most important things, which is getting the tool and then getting the tool configured to target the right things. Now we're going to start doing some ad hoc commands. So ad hoc commands in our environment are going to be one-off commands. They're just one-off commands that do little things. You might think of, if some of you ever played any D&D or something like that, you might think of this as your cantrips. These are just your quick and dirty little things. They're not really... I'm going to pin this lab for people that want to do it with me. Pin it over on the YouTube side. And, let me pin it for you guys over there. Replace the pinned message, sure. And then this is going to be now just little one-off things to test the connectivity and that the things that are going to happen in our environment work the way that we want. We are building up to playbooks. Playbooks are the this is why there's a cult of Ansible. When we get to playbooks, you're going to be like, that's pretty slick. So I can do that against 1,000 nodes and make sure they're all the same. Yes. I can check a bunch of nodes and then give a report that they're all good. Yep. I can do, you can do all kinds of things, and you can do them very simply. You do not have to have some advanced computer science degree to do any of this stuff. It's very simple steps done in the correct order and right will generate and build these things for us. So let's not talk about it. Let's be about it a little bit. But over here, I'm going to make this a little bigger so you guys can see it. Your team has decided they need a tool that they can control and operate the many servers you have in the environment. This is the same intro every time, right? You have been tasked with evaluating Ansible. You know that individual modules can be called in ad hoc mode. So you decide to try running some commands against your test inventory servers. Okay. So maybe I cat root hosts, and look at that. Somebody already built the inventory for us. So now I'm just looking at an inventory that's already there. And I said, verify your host file and test ad hoc commands. Let's verify all the servers have some type of uptime. We'll use that later in our reporting, but let's just verify. We'll verify the OS type of the servers. We'll look at all the tasty values. There's like, and it's something like 16 pages worth of data that Ansible can pull out of a server. That's a lot of data, guys. And we're going to pull that all out, and then we can use any of it we want. We can report on it. We can stamp it to the server and verify if it changes over the months. We can do all kinds of things. But again, we just have to make it work once. Once we get it to work, then you're like, that's how Ansible works. Okay. So we're going to create a file called root version with all the Ansible facts on the server, and create a file called root date with the current date of each server. So, okay. So let's cat root hosts. Good. Let's type Ansible to see that we have Ansible on the box. Good. That's good. And let's go check all the servers' uptime. We're going to do an ad hoc command, and that ad hoc command just says Ansible servers. Servers is the name of the host group inside of our inventory file. Here's the definition. That's the hard definition of our inventory file, so it doesn't use the default one in our server. The default one typically by default in your system is etc Ansible hosts. And then in modern Ansible, I think it's just etc Ansible hosts, but the old way used to be etc/, so /etc/Ansible/host/hosts. Now it's just /etc/Ansible/hosts, I believe. By the way, that's configurable. You can use a .cfg file for Ansible and change it. The shell module we used is just going to go over and execute things on that far server. And what we chose to use as the argument to that was uptime. What if I told you we could use pretty much, almost, not quite, but almost any piece of shell code that we want to drop right there we could use. I could get, watch this, I can get uname-r, get the kernel version. Now, very quickly, some of you will go, there's a better way to do it. There are better ways to do it, but that is a thing I can do. I can do this. I can say host name and then uname-r and then uptime. And I can do all of those in a line if I understand how to do that in a bash prompt, right? Again, better ways to do it, but it's something that could be done, right? Because again, we're just trying to like hold Ansible in our hands, kind of like Predator looks at a skull and go, you know, what are you? Like we're trying to grok the system and understand what's happening with it, okay? So, if you never use Ansible, this is a quick walkthrough of exactly all the things that are happening. So, come over here. There's another one. That is just playing with the shell command, and you could drop all kinds of stuff in here. You could drop a reboot in there and reboot your nodes, and then you're going to have to log back into your shell. But let's go ahead and do another one. This one's going to drop. This is going to do the module setup. Setup calls factor on all the machines and gathers facts. It's the same way when we get to playbooks later. We're going to decide, do we want to gather facts or do we not want to gather facts? We're going to kind of make a distinction and make a decision. Well, when we do this, we're going to pull about 16 pages of info from each server. Watch this. It's probably going to go longer than my scroll back. Look at all this. This is JSON outputted. So JSON or JSON, however you want to say that. And I can go pull any piece of information out there. In fact, there's some regex style stuff we can do with filters. I'm going to show you that here in a second. Look at all this. I can get, here's the labels of VDA 14, which is the first disk partition 14. Well, number 14. It's not an ordinal counting 14, but it is numbered 14. And here's the information about that disk. Here's the information about, I mean, all kinds of things, right? I'm going to show you ones that I've used a lot in my career, but as you play with these, you'll pick up more that are interesting to you. One of the ones that I really love is Ansible distribution. So we were talking earlier about if you have all the systems in your environment are the same, well, I can validate, and maybe there's a few that aren't. Well, I can do this command right here. So we're going to filter by Ansible distribution, and we're going to see that the Ansible distribution for this server is Ubuntu. Now, maybe there's some different information about the distribution that I want to know, so I can put an asterisk there, and then now I can get some other information, because maybe I want to behave differently if it's Ansible distribution major version 24 or 20. I'm going to do two different types of steps maybe, and now my playbook has some branching logic I can do. We'll get to the logic of how we call things and when we do our when conditions later. But essentially, while Ansible and the YAML that we use is not truly a programming language, you can do a tremendous amount of decision structures to do a lot of filtering down of systems. I always visualize in my head when I call, because I run Ansible against thousands of nodes, I don't know what's going to come out. I don't know what nodes I'm going to get in the list from my configuration management team or some other team that's saying what we're allowed to patch for this weekend in the window. So what I know is how to do the Linux side of things. But the inventory of what nodes are being allowed to be patched on and all those kind of things, I might not know. So I think of, when I start a playbook, I think of it like a Plinko machine. Any of you guys ever seen the little Plinko machines? I have a little thing of this, but if you've never seen Plinko, Plinko is this idea that you just drop a ball at the top and it goes like this until it gets down. Well, it's a little more controlled in Ansible because I'm just saying drop all the servers in and then they're going to go where they go based on decisions about and things that we know about the servers. Now, it's not exactly Plinko because Plinko is just random, whereas all of our Ansible distributions are going to go one way or the other way. But that being said, just know that Ansible distribution has a whole bunch of information about it. You can just get the Ubuntu, or you can do like I did where I added an asterisk and then I got all the sub information as well. When I go to call a variable, when we get into playbooks later, we're going to call it just like this by its name. We're going to call it just by its name and say when Ansible distribution major version equals 24, do this task. Right? And you can modify that and do that a whole bunch of different ways, and there's some really good stuff with that. But suffice it to say now, the data are in existence, and we can go and pull them whenever we want. That's very important. So let's go look at, so that was our distribution information. Let's go throw that into a file, just so we have it. Whoops, right here. Here's our file. Go throw that Ansible distribution in there. And then I'm going to show you one. This is one of my favorite ones to use, and it's one of my favorite ones when we're generating files and we're doing different stuff. Is the setup of time. So the filter we're using here is Ansible underscore date underscore time. So here's all the time formats that Ansible can pull out of any server. Here it is right here. So it's under Ansible facts. When we call it, it's Ansible underscore date underscore time dot date, or Ansible underscore date underscore time dot day. Whatever information we need to pull out of the system. Look at it. It's this wonderful amount of information. And some of you guys, I often say, like if you're a programmer or you do a lot of API calls and stuff, you've probably seen this time format more than you want to admit. Probably so much that you're like, God, I see that stuff in my sleep. Well, some of you might not know, maybe you're newer, you don't know that that's the ISO 8601 format standard. Some of you might know that, and that's one of those things that it doesn't really matter, right? Like it doesn't. It's important if you're talking to somebody else, hey, we're going to do our APIs via ISO 8601, but that's also just kind of assumed. Like that's almost always going to be the standard. But I'm going to tell you guys, when I do stuff for file systems, I always use this one, ISO 8601 basic short. And before I tell you guys, or if any of you guys have been around, does anybody know why I prefer this one over the other 4? So there's 4 total right here that I might use. But why don't I use the other ones? Anybody know? Anybody want to guess? Also, thanks for the follows, guys. Hopefully this stuff's useful to you. You guys can see Ranger telling you we're doing Linux out back. Where's Ranger? He's not on his bed. Guys, it's 83 in Phoenix. It's expected to get to like, I think it's only supposed to get to 89 today, but it was 100 the other day already, so just brutal out here. Anybody want to take a guess? Oh, wait a minute. I know I don't normally wait. I just go. But look at all this stuff you can get out of the system. I can know the time zone. I could validate the time zone is the same across all my servers, and when we get to Jinja templating later, I can pop out only if my servers don't have the UTC time zone. I'll pop it out, and then I'll know which of my servers are configured wrong against thousands of servers if I wanted, right? I do checks like this all the time against huge clusters because all I do is high performance compute, right? Smallest clusters I work on are typically about 200 to 300 nodes. Bigger ones are in the 10,000 range, right? At any given time, I'm working on a bunch of different clusters, but this, and guys, Ansible works fine for me. Does all the stuff I need it to. All right, so all we're doing here is looking at the values, and then we'll throw the time over there into a file. The one I like the most, the one you guys will see me use the most, is ISO 8601 basic short. And the reason I don't use this and the reason I don't use this are because they have colons in them, and colons should never have been allowed at the file in the file name. Probably somewhere around like 15 years ago. Windows and Linux did this around the same time. They started allowing special characters that weren't allowed at the file system level. But in Linux, if you do it, you have to escape them. So watch, I'll show you. I'll take this right here, and I'll just say touch some file dot that, right? I hate this. And then I want to ls some file, and look at how that has to be handled in the file system. Just hate it. You got to escape them. It's not great. Because if I want to scrape that later, I don't want those characters in there. So you might say, "Oh, you just pull them out." And I'm like, I don't want to go that deep in the scripting side of it for just something that could be as simple as I just stamp it right from the get-go. And then you might say, "Why not this one?" Well, this one doesn't have them. That's too granular. I don't care about the microsecond. This is down into the millisecond right here. Actually, that might be. Yeah. I don't need that far down, right? So there we go. All right. So we hit check and we're good. And it says, "Look at you learning Ansible." You saw that challenge. That whole challenge was just about running Ansible against those nodes in an ad hoc mode, doing some very simple things. You might want to grab your history and grab that and throw that in your notes or something, and then go examine some of those later. Yeah, stuff like well, that's in the command. In the command, I can do that for sure, but I don't want that stamped to my files and stuff. So, Yeah. In the commands, you can use colons for sure. So that's the third lab, right? The fourth lab is just going to continue on that, and then we're all done with ad hoc mode. We'll have installed Ansible, we'll have built-in inventory, we'll have done 2 labs on ad hoc, and then we're just going to go and start building playbooks. So let's go play with one last little bit of like touching individual commands, and then we'll do the real stuff. We'll start to get into the real thing. So we got one more ad hoc mode. This is going to be pushing files around and changing them. So let me unpin the old lab. I know we're going a little fast, but we're getting some stuff done today. I'll pin that on the Twitch side, and then on the YouTube side, let me unpin this message. Unpin message. Pin this new message. Give me a second here. By the way, all these things that we're doing, I mean, you know, we've been running these labs for a few years now. All of these are up in the Discord, and you know, if you have any questions about them, just let me know. Also, all of these are publicly hosted on my GitHub. It's by far my most popular repository, and you guys can actually do pull requests against these and fix them if you find any bugs. In fact, I typically, before June, so probably here in the next few months, I'll have some kind of bounty for people to go and fix things in the different environments, because I've been building new ones as well. So let's do this lab. This lab says, let's see, you guys have it. All right, your team has decided they need a tool that they can use to control and operate the many servers. That's the same thing that we've decided. You have been tasked with evaluating Ansible. Boom. You decided to practice more of the ad hoc mode and deploy a configuration file that you need in your environment. So for fun, we've defined a configuration file that we need, and we're going to push it and then make changes to it, maybe for specific environments that we're in, that kind of stuff. You find that there's a value that needs to change on different servers, so you figure out how to do that task. That's very common. One of the things that I used to do was I pushed a lot of New Relic. New Relic is very similar to like Datadog, or if any of you guys have ever done like application, what we call tracing through an app. New Relic is one, and what would happen is an app would get a new, somewhere some admin in our company had control of New Relic, and they would say, okay, we're developing a new app for one of our 200 app teams. I had a whole bunch of dev teams, right? And we're going to do a new app, and we want to track, so we'll generate a new Relic ID, and then when we deploy New Relic to those servers, we want to put that new ID in the config file. This is a thing that I used to really do. I mean, I wrote these. I mean, I have these configs. I think they're up in the Discord as well, but it's like it's a very common thing to go change one thing in a file. Now, you can use Jinja templates for that. There's other ways to do this, but this is a way to do it that would also work if you only had one file config to change. So let's go ahead and do it. We're going to verify our root hosts and config files. So root hosts, and then is Ansible here? Ansible's there, right? We also have a file in this environment called root config file.cfg. This is the file we're going to push to all the nodes for fun. It's not a real config file, but it could be, right? And it could be, you know, app ID key or something, app ID or API key or whatever it is, right? So we're going to create a directory on our servers called deployments, opt deployment. That's where we typically put like third-party things as an opt. We're going to push over our config file, and then we're going to change the values of var1 to equal all ones, just for fun. All right, let's see if we can do that. So we cat root hosts, cat the config file, and now we're going to create via an ad hoc mode. We're going to use the file command right here. So the module is file, and the argument we're going to give it is the path opt deployment, and the state, because we don't want it to just be an empty file, is directory. So it went over there and it made a file on both of those systems that is a directory called opt deployment. Now, this is where Ansible's kind of fun. Let's play with it a little bit. Let's press up and run it again. This time it's going to find opt deployment already there. It didn't need to make a change. But then I go, it's owned by root and the group owner is root, but I don't want everybody else able to get a New Relic. Nobody else ever needs to be a New Relic besides the root owner. So I'm going to make mode. So I'm going to say mode here equals, and my mode is going to be 0750, which if you know your permissions in Linux, that 0 at the end says now that if you're not the owner of the file root, who has a 7 permission, or a group owner of root, which has a 5 permission, you're now going to have a 0 permission for everybody else. So F off, you can't get in my server. You can't get in that opt deployment directory if you're not root or in the group root. So when this goes, now it needed to change it. And if I ls-ld in my directory, opt deployment, I see that it is indeed 750. So we can use Ansible to just fix permissions on servers, set permissions on servers. You can do all kinds of useful things with Ansible against directories and those kind of things if you wanted to. So hopefully that's clear as mud, right? CoreWired, I started with Puppet, so it's kind of hard at first to get an Ansible sort of push method versus maintaining state. You can do ad hoc with Puppet too, but it felt it was wrong to do it. Yeah, Puppet, the thing about Puppet, because I've used Puppet and Chef in my career, and I think I never really used Salt officially, but I've been in some environments that had Salt. All of those have agents, and I never wanted to like keep up on an agent. One of the most powerful things about Ansible, one of the reasons there's such a big cult of Ansible, is I don't need nothing running on these servers. I need, well, as with all servers, if I want to maintain them, I have to have SSH up, and then I have to have Python on it. But those two things are a given in a Linux environment. So yeah, I have to have power to my server, basically, which, you know, I guess would be true of all things. So Ansible, like, we're not quite to why Ansible's super powerful yet. We're only on the ad hoc stuff. We're just playing right now. But soon we're going to be the powerful stuff. So we've modified this. By the way, if I just keep running that command, it'll find it in a good state and it doesn't need to change anything. This is the concept of idempotency. The changed is now false. Do you see that? And if I changed it back to 055, the changed would be true, and that true coming changed when we call a file module later. If the output is changed, and then I have a notify command set, notify will go notify a handler to maybe restart a service later on in the playbook. And you might say, oh, that seems kind of interesting, but why wouldn't I just, you know, I changed the file, and then why wouldn't I just restart it right after that? Well, you could use it. You can do a task to restart services all day. Doesn't matter. But that's not idempotent because that task will always restart no matter what. But let's say I wanted to add a file, or I wanted to, in this case, modify a directory, and only if I modified that directory do I want to restart the service. That would be this concept of idempotency. I could run the thing 1,000 times, and as long as a change doesn't happen, it would never notify the handler, and it would never restart the service. Guys, there's a lot of ways to bake this up. We're talking ingredients still, and then I just started mentioning like a souffle. Let's still work on ingredients and finish this up, and then we'll start to get into some of the capabilities of the system that we can do, right? So that's just a basic file. I messed around with it a little bit. And now we can copy our config file over there. And look, now we're using the copy module. And the copy module is going to come from our local source to that destination and opt deployment, and it's going to go push this file over. And it's going to do two type of checksums. This is a SHA-1 sum of the file, and this is a MD5 sum of the file. Now, how do I know that's a SHA-1? Well, we're using Linux, so we can verify it. I can say MD5 sum of, in our case it's both, but root deploy config file, sorry. There's that, and then I can do a SHA-1 sum. And then there's the SHA-1 sum 5065A, 5065A. So both of them get used. You can go look up why. SHA-1 is actually deprecated, but it still works just fine for Ansible, so there's no reason to change that. All we want to do is make sure things are the same in two locations, right? And then we want to change a config file. Oh, by the way, if we run that command again to repush the file, it'll find it already there. It won't need to push it. So now there's been no change to the config file. If we modify the file and then repush it, it would get a different checksum, and then it would change the file that's there. But if the checksum's the same, it's not going to change the file in any way. All right. Now we're going to go modify that file. We're going to do a command called line in file. or the module is line and file. And the module is going to call a path. That path as an argument gives us the config file over on the remote system. And then we're going to do a regex for anything that starts with var1. And then we're going to change the line to var1 111, which earlier you guys saw was 000. So now if I ls dash, or if I just cat opt deploy and config file, you'll see that it's 1111. We changed it. But if it doesn't need to change, it won't change it. So watch, now that's set correctly. It doesn't need to change anymore. If I push the original file back, it does have to change because now it's changing it back, right? Change it back. And now my line and file would need to change it. Then line and file doesn't need to change it, and so on and so on and so on. And that's like really a nice thing for Ansible, a nice way to kind of understand how this all works. Now, we could do a quick little validation with a shell command, and we would see that they're correct right now because they're set the way that we want. This is the extent of the ad hoc stuff that I do in the labs. This is as much as I kind of need you to know before we can jump into playbooks and start to build out things that are going to be much, much more powerful in the long run. But all the things that we just did, all those simple things are just going to build up. You know, we called a module, we gave it some arguments. We're going to change the format of it a little bit for a playbook, but it's going to be the same exact thing as what we just did right here. So how about we get into that? There we go. Okay, so be schizophrenic. Nice. Yeah, also Puppet and Chef in general, they were still being supported in the cloud up until probably last year, and AWS dropped their OpsWorks. So OpsWorks were specifically, AWS OpsWorks was specifically for Puppet and Chef configurations, and they've dropped support for that. So that's actually been, I think it was in Twilight last year, and I think it's gone this year now, or it's going away this year. So that's another thing to think about as you guys choose a tool to use, right? This one, Ansible and Terraform, both of them, I don't know if you guys know this, are both owned by IBM now. So Ansible was bought when IBM bought Red Hat in 2019, because Ansible is owned by Red Hat. Now Red Hat's owned by IBM, so there you go. And then on the HashiCorp side, HashiCorp was bought a couple years ago by IBM, and HashiCorp runs Terraform. And then you say, but I can just use OpenTofu. And I say, well, you can use OpenTofu for now, but if they keep getting cease and desist letters about, using the same code, you might see that change. Because I've told you guys what happens when companies cross IBM, right? They get sued out of existence. So, yeah, Terraform and Ansible are owned by the same company, IBM. Yep. As of not last year, I think it was 2023 when HashiCorp got bought by IBM. Yeah. Yeah, if you guys didn't know that, yeah, it's all. I mean, that's all open, like public knowledge. But OpenTofu is a fork, but a couple things. They still use the HashiCorp language, which I think is interesting. And then two, they've had at least 2 cease and desist letters sent to them by HashiCorp as they were being bought. So if another one comes, don't be surprised if they get taken to court. And I always use the LavaSoft example because Platform LSF Platform LSF got forked into Lava. Was it Open Lava or whatever? I think they called it LavaSoft, and then IBM sued them until they shut down. So you can go look that all up if you guys want. Corewired, you worked at IBM when they acquired Red Hat, and the CEO was their temper. Yeah, Corewired, I was at Red Hat Summit that year. Probably the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me in all the times I've used open source. There were 2 keynote speakers that year when it was in Summit 19. It was so it was Red Hat Summit. They brought in the CEO of IBM and they brought in the CEO of Microsoft to talk. And I was like, and you say the CEO of yeah, see, and people were, and I was like, this guy's been our enemy the entire time I've done Linux, and it's super weird. It was so weird. Easily one of the weirdest conferences. Like I'm in a room with like 10,000 people, and they're like clapping for a guy that I'm like, are you guys Linux engineers? Like, what the hell is happening right here? Like, it was weird. It was I did not expect Microsoft CEO to get a bunch of claps from a guy or from a bunch of guys that were like Linux nerds. Happened. I was just sitting there like watching. Literally, everybody was clapping, and I was not super. Whatever. I mean, it's their show. They do whatever they want with it. It was super weird. So, all right. So that's the beginning parts of the labs, right? Then we're going to jump down. The next parts of the labs, we're going to start to do some playbooks. So lab 5 will start some playbooks. Yeah, it's all sportsmanship. Yeah, it's all, patting each other on the back and all that good stuff. All right, what we're going to do real quick. Take a quick, actually, you know what? What's our time at? Yeah, we're at an hour. I won't take a break just yet, but I'll probably cut out a little early today. We'll just get into the first parts of the lab and kind of get some of you guys familiar with this, because honestly, once you get the basics of this stuff that we're doing here down, most of you are just going to go run off and you're going to ramp up like this and be like, oh, that's, I could do this, I could do that. I tell you guys all the time, I've been showing people Ansible. I started using Ansible in 2013, and I've been showing it to people, and they'll come back like a week later and be like, what do you think of this? And it'll be like way more complex than anything I've ever done. And I'm like, oh, that looks really, really nice. That's kind of cool. But it's like, that's not, I mean, I'm just a guy that I do basic, simple things well, and they just work. But people excel past me, I think, often. And I'm like, oh, that's good. It's a good thing to do. So let's go into the next lab. Anybody that wants to follow along, here's going to be the lab. Get this linked. Hold on. Get rid of the old lab and get rid of it over there on that side. Unpin the message. All right. So this is going to be lab 5. This is going to be the first one where we put together a playbook. Let me go pin it over on the YouTube side if anybody wants to follow along. Again, these labs are free, guys. They don't cost you nothing. And if you're sitting here hanging out with me anyways, you might as well click some buttons on your keyboard, right? Or I think you should. So, hold on, I gotta check. Every time I see this little message, by the way, the wife's plane just took off. Every time the message pops up, I go to see if there's any traffic being generated from these ads. I kind of think it's funny that I put together a little ad manager thing on Facebook, because one of my buddies does, all he does is like ad management stuff for companies. And I'm just looking at, let's see here. All right. Interesting. All right. Go play with that stuff later. All right, there's too many things to play with. I can't, guys, I'll squirrel off into other things if you let me. So, going to Microsoft was a weird thing. Yeah. It was weird. I was also there. I don't know. They made a bold claim that I was like, I'm not going to say you guys are lying. I'm just going to say that Microsoft made a claim at that 2019 summit. The CEO of Microsoft and said that they've contributed more to Apache than any other organization or person. And I'm like, I almost, and actually I was thinking about it, I'm like, maybe that is true, and only because of this one thing. If you guys remember what happened in the 90s, I was barely aware of it, so you'd have to probably be older than me to have really been keeping up on this news. They got sued really, really hard for embedding Internet Explorer directly into the OS and basically excluding all other browsers. I don't know if you guys know that. Microsoft wanted to control your access to the Internet fully. And then I think about it, and I'm like, the only thing that kept, because IIS is one of the worst things ever built. If you guys know what IIS is, it's their Internet Information Service. It's their web page, their web, whatever the fuck that thing is. It's absolute garbage. But Apache is Apache's in like all the web servers in the world, right? Yeah. So I was thinking about it, I'm like, maybe they really did do that because they didn't want to have a no competition environment. But then I think, but IIS was so bad, like. Nope, I've literally never seen a web page on IIS. Like, that wasn't internal. It's bad. I don't know if any of you guys have ever like internally in a company had to use SharePoint. SharePoint is the most disjointed piece of garbage I've ever seen. Like you're on a page. You're the admin of a page. Some person in the company gives you admin to a page, and you're like, all right, I got some kind of WYSIWYG editor. I'm gonna like pull this over. I'm gonna try to move this start button down here. Can't do it. Guys, I don't care what kind of smarts you got, and I don't care whatever. You've got to like form fill that. It's like it's one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. And then you're like, I just want a link right here to our document. No, can't do that. Nope. You got to turn it into like a deployable module, fucking something button. And you're like, what the hell is this? It's really bad. SharePoint has gotten better, but it's still pretty bad. Anyway, so yeah, Plinko machines. We were talking about that, how to build your inventory. All right, let's do the lab. Lab's pinned. Let me see. Actually, we got to wait. We're gonna wait a minute on the YouTube or on the Twitch side because there's an ad that's about to start. So we'll wait for the ad to get over and then we'll go. Yeah, SharePoint. It's actually funny. So one of my brothers does data analytics. So one of my brothers runs OpenShift for his company, and one of my other brothers does data analytics. And he just moved into a new role, and he's in charge of this project. He's doing all the data for about $150 million project in his company. He's doing all the data analytics and providing all the reports and stuff. And it's super funny that he just moved into the role, but he's been doing data analytics for the last few years. And he talks about how one, all this stuff has to be done through SharePoint, so that's annoying. And two, he talks about how like no matter how nice of boards you build in Power BI and all these tools that they use and whatever, somebody will always have a question. So he just builds it now. Like, can I export that to like CSV? Can I export that and get that in like a Excel doc? So like you present all this data and they're like, can I get that in Excel? And you're like, oh. Anyways, that's kind of funny. All right. Let's wait for that ad to be over. It says it's got 50 more seconds, so I'm going to take a long, slow drink of water. I'm just kidding. And we're going to build a playbook. We're going to build a playbook that deploys a thing. That's what this thing should say right here. Create a playbook to stage an app. Yeah, we're just staging the application. We're not deploying it until the next one. But this one is a good one, I think. So we'll wait. We'll wait for everybody to get back. When everybody gets back from ads, then we'll go. Over on the YouTube side, hopefully I'm not missing anything. Yeah, I don't see anything over there. We're just going through that. Guys, Sundays are labs, right? We do labs on Sundays. We work through projects. If you guys have questions about stuff, let me know. I'm kind of chilling on Sundays after. Saturdays are busy for me. You guys know that we're doing the Linux sysadmin group in the Discord. That's free. And then we're doing the Linux security engineering course, which just hit Unit 3 yesterday. And then some of you know, if you were there, here's the drama with it. I didn't have the lab done. So I built the lab and finished it last night. So if you watch the recording now on YouTube, because the recording 3 is up, I did have the lab completed and I did finish the lab. And then the lab's been published. So any of you guys that need the lab, it's down here in Prolog projects. So there's the lab 3, identity and access management. We did that earlier, right? So that lab and getting in there and all that stuff is good. Also, there's the discussions, and you can go get involved with the discussion posts if you're interested in doing the course. All right. We're done with the break. So I was just talking as we were on the break. Your team has decided they need a tool that they can use to control and operate the many servers in your environment. You've been tasked with evaluating Ansible. You've done enough with the one-off ad hoc mode commands. You feel pretty good about Ansible. So now you decide to put them in a playbook and stage a deployment.tar file that you have. So somebody wrote some deployer that personalizes servers, and maybe you have some older servers and you want to add some app or whatever. I don't know, whatever. And you're going to deploy that to all your test servers. You just want to see it work and see it happen. So we're going to verify our host file. There's root hosts. Let's verify that we have a root deploy.tar.gz. That's good. And we should have a deploy.yaml. We have to make that. Okay, that's fine. So if we ls in here, we've got deploy.tar.gz and we've got hosts. Okay. The tip is if you get stuck, you can just pull out over here that file. So we can just copy the file if we wanted, and then now we have root deploy.yaml. All right. So here's our solution down here of what we're going to make. We can cat root hosts. Whoops. over here, we can cat root hosts. Boom, good. We can do a SHA-1 sum to make sure that we have a good SHA-1 sum of that file for root tar.deploy. And then let's go look at our root deploy.yaml. If we were going to write this by hand, we could, but we're just going to go ahead and look at it. And we have 3 dashes across the top to denote the start of a YAML playbook or a YAML file. If you guys ever get into doing a lot of Kubernetes, you know that you can actually, within one file, just keep doing 3 dashes, and it'll denote the start of a new YAML file, right? A new YAML, well, as it were, it's a file, because when you use like kubelet or something like that, or kubectl, it'll parse those down as their own API calls. So some of you guys have done that. Otherwise, here's a little block that we always put at the top of everything. I don't ever memorize this block, guys. I mean, the values are all the same, but I'm kind of lazy. I just steal it from myself all the time. So I always have this somewhere so I can use it. And then here's an arbitrary name at the beginning. We can do any name we want here. This name right here, within the general rules of characters and non-special characters, we can call this whatever we want. We're calling it the start of the deployer playbook. Sure. The servers that we're going to go against are servers that are found in that's the host group, right? Hosts are the host group that come from our inventory file right there. I'll show you guys a trick here in a little bit. Well, we'll do it on this lab, but I'll show you guys a trick that I use to short circuit my playbooks in the enterprise, and this is something I use everywhere. I've used it professionally for many years. I'll show you guys that here in a second to short this out. If I had any special variables, I can put them here. There's 22 places that Ansible can get variables, and there is a variable precedence. So you can say Ansible variable precedence right here, precedence. And then using variables, and we get down here. Well, apparently it's going to just not have it. Where's precedence? It's near the bottom. So if I were to link this to you guys, here are the 22 places that Ansible can get. You don't need to memorize this, and you don't even need to know it. But I'm just going to tell you, you should know that there is a variable precedence, because if something's coming in from somebody's environment file, it might override something you're doing in your playbook. So you do need to understand these. But what I would tell you is don't say like, well, shoot, I got 22 places to put stuff. I'm just going to put stuff in 22 places. No, guys, look, when I'm sitting here working all day, I reach right here for water bottles. What do you say? How's that relate? I reach for the same places for my variables all the time. I don't go a million different places for my variables, right? Yeah, so know the hierarchy and know how to override things, but also get in the practice of doing good definition of variables as we get into those, and also probably having default values for variables. Those are important as well. But anyway, so we come back over here. If I had any special vars, I could put them here. If I had any vars files, I could have another line and I could put that there. Are we going to gather facts about these servers? Yes, we are. We're going to say true. That's going to go run that setup module with all activities, and it's going to gather about 16 pages worth of facts for each of the servers. Then we can use those facts for the rest of the playbook. Ansible kind of has like a little sack over its shoulder. I always talk about like this little sack over its shoulder, and it kind of like walks around, and it can pull those variables out later and put them into templates. It can pull those variables out and check them for variable logic, conditional logic, and those kind of things. You can do all kinds of stuff with them. But you have to have them. If you don't do a gather facts here, you can do setup modules later, even only against smaller blocks of information. But the point is, if data are not available, you can't use data. That's just a simple little fact or whatever, right? Become is false because we're already root, so we don't have to become. But become true would make us root if it needed to. We're already root, so that's fine. And then if we wanted to, we could have become underscore method here. And there's a bunch of methods to become root. The most common ones are sudo. There's a few other ones, and you can go look up the become methods, right? Like I can go here. Watch here. If this is another way, and I can just say become, right? And then yeah. So here's authentication modules become. We should have Ansible, and then the become methods should be defined. I would probably do this through Google. But then here's the become plugins, And typically, most of us just expect to use sudo, right? That's the default. Sudo su do as. Do as is a tool I don't really use, but that may be something that's specific to something you have. And then there's some other ones. And if you really need to, you can go dig into any of these modules. It's all written in Python, right? You can modify local systems too. Just remember that they're going to get blasted and overwritten if you don't do environments and stuff like that, which that comes in later when you start using Ansible Automation Platform. You can build environments specifically for certain things that you need to have. But that's like, let's call that Ansible later. Let's still work on, we're doing basics, right? This basic thing, and then we get to tasks. And because we're dealing in YAML, tasks are going to be enumerated by a dash for each individual task. And then we only have one task right here. We're doing one task. Here's its arbitrary name, deploy tar.gz over at, and then I give a variable. This is how you call a variable in Ansible. 2 open curly brackets, 2 close curly brackets. And look at that. Ansible underscore date underscore time dot ISO 8601 basic short. That's a variable we looked at earlier that comes from setup. So if you didn't have this done, if this was false, this would break because you wouldn't have the variable. It wouldn't exist. Then we use the copy module, and what we had done earlier in ad hoc commands at command line are now being given in YAML as key value pairs as arguments. So here's the module. Here's the argument source is root deploy.tar.gz on this system. The destination is the far system where we're putting it. And here's a checksum. The checksum is going to verify that nobody's messed with my file. And you might say, Scott, do you really think people are going to mess with your file? You're an admin on system. I have worked in the career long enough to know that even people who have really, really good intentions will sometimes take, like, let's say I had a tar for that New Relic. I was talking about New Relic earlier. This is exactly how I would deploy my New Relic. I would push everything over, unpackage it, do my work, right? With Ansible. Sometimes somebody might have said, well, oh, shoot, you know what? I'm going to go just use that version that Scott's been deploying everywhere in like the dev environment, and I'm going to go update to the new version of New Relic, and Scott's going to be super happy. Well, don't assume Scott's going to ever be happy if anything changes. I have to do this because even with your best intentions, as some other admin or engineer in the company, even with your best intentions, if you change something, I may have made an assumption that, you know, you might not know all the assumptions that I put into my playbook. Because, by the way, this is just the deploy setup. Next, I'm going to deploy and run a script out of there. What if you put new packages in here? And those new packages don't deploy the same way. They don't take the same flags. This is the crux of all engineering. When you guys hear me say, like, I need control, I just need to fucking have control of this thing and not give it to anybody else. It's not because we're trying to be jerks. It's because I want shit that has my name on it to work. I don't want like oh, Scott writes broken stuff. It's not my stuff that's broken. Somebody changed and it's like, but how are you gonna convince people of that? They're just, okay, I'll just go fix it, and then you got to go check, figure out how it broke and redo it. So yeah, server drift, configuration drift, file drift. People with good intentions still break automations that you make. So I build all my stuff into packages and push my package over. This is very similar to people like with GitHub, where your GitHub always has that commit string. And now, if I've deployed from that commit, by the way, with Ansible Git, you can validate that it's the exact same string every time, and you can always call that. And then if something modifies and you can't use it anymore or something, it won't run, right? So that's something that you can do. But anyways, let's we're not up to Ansible Git yet. In fact, I don't have a lab on that, but I do have a lab where you pull something down. But anyways. So here's our deployment. It says it's ready, so let's go try to run it, right? This is one of these things, one test is worth 1,000 expert opinions. Let's just run the thing. Let's just see it happen. So started the deployer, it gathered facts, and then it copied that deploy.tar.gz over at, and it gave us that time. And then it gives us a little cool recap. We didn't get this before. We got a cool little recap. And there was one thing that was changed because it did push that deployer over opt deploy.tar.gz. So if I cd to opt ls, there it is, deploy.tar.gz. What happens if I run it again? It's going to check. Didn't need to push. Didn't change anything. Nothing's changed. Pushed over. If I want to go manually verify that things are there on the server, I could use a ad hoc command again. We're back to ad hoc. And we just ran a little ls-l and just saw them. I could even do a checksum right here. I could just do ck sum. Are they all the same? I can change that checksum to, what was it, a SHA-1 earlier? That SHA-1 sum should perfectly line up with this SHA-1 sum from the original file. Nothing's changed. Everything is exactly balanced into my system with whatever I'm pushing. Does anybody know a good groupware for Linux? I'm not sure. I might need more context if I can try to help you with that. I'm not sure 100% what you mean by groupware. I'm probably not. I probably just don't know the context you're asking for that. But anyway, so that's, if we hit check here, that's that whole lab. Just get a playbook to run, because guys, I'm convinced, right? Like I tell you guys this, and I will say this all the way to the end. I'm convinced that if you could do this, right? If you could get this to run, this playbook, I really do believe that most of you, if I said, hey, okay, I really do, like, for people that are interested in doing this stuff, I really think most of you could go look at this and go, and I said, well, you know what, hold on, guys, I made a mistake, guys. This shouldn't be here. Can I just like Y4Y and then P right here? And could I remember earlier we did a file command? Guys, I messed up. I need to do file here, right? Because I need to make sure that, ensure the right path is there. Right? Ensure the right directory exists. Guys, I made a mistake. The file that I actually wanted to do, and I can go, by the way, look up what my file arguments are, but now path is going to be, let's say, opt. Let's call this was New Relic, right? So New Relic. This is where I meant to put it, guys. I messed up. And also, because we said security earlier, mode has to be 0750. Guys, I messed up. And then this path actually should be over into New Relic, right? Let's just say I arbitrarily made that up. Well, file does the thing. Oh, it needs to be a directory, right? So what was that? State directory. Boom. And I think most of you could probably have done what I just did right there. And I think most of you could probably have done it pretty quickly. Got to make sure the right directory exists. Make sure it's all there. Push it again. And then now, if we cd to opt, cd to New Relic, because I shouldn't be deploying stuff right in opt. That's messy. Now it's down in my own directory, and I can do whatever I want with it. But I think most of you guys, what was that thing called? I don't know. Oh. I think most of you guys could figure that out, how to add and change this stuff, because you've seen all the pieces and you got it to work once. I'm convinced, like most people that have like an engineering, like a puzzle, like they like solving puzzles and stuff, they go, oh, do that. Next thing I know, you've got like 30 different modules inside this playbook and you're doing all this other stuff. And I'm like, whew, he's already better at this stuff than I am, because I just do the basic stuff. That's all I do. So it's like you guys have the capability, and then you say, well, Scott, where are all those other modules? Remember that Ansible doc stuff from earlier? You go look up all the modules you want. You say, well, what if I wanted to add a user? Ansible doc. So I need a user called New Relic on my system. But hold on, because of how the systems were built, well, I'll show you guys something real quick. This is important for system. This is a sysadmin important thing, but I'm going to show you guys this because even though we're kind of talking more like admin and building stuff as engineers, this is a very important Ansible thing. Let me show you this. User. So the user has the ability to create users, right? And what if I had a bunch of servers, but I wanted to make sure that the user was the same, and the same, when I say the same, I mean they had the same, there's role, SE shell, keys if I want to do keys, state, UID. What if I needed to make sure that that UID for that user was for sure 14,001? So we have 14001. We were going to use that 14,001 for our New Relic user in the system across the board. Well, I can use this tool for it. So now I could use this module. But the reason you can't just do, let me show you guys something. If you didn't, some of you guys are going to be like, oh, Scott, I knew that. Obviously, some of you guys know this. But if I cat Etsy pass WD, and then I say, well, user add. I'm going to do user add Scott. We'll do a -M so he gets a home directory. Who here knows what user, what's the user going to get right here for his ID? If you look here real quick, 1,000 was the last non-system and non-system and non-app user. Started at 1,000. So we could guess that he's going to get 1,001, right? Okay, he did get 1,001. And what if somebody had built Scott before, so now Scott 2, what's he going to get? Does anybody know? The next one, right? And we're going to keep getting that. Well, hold on. What if some app had put another user already on the system? Like some server is a database server, so he's got okay, so that's a bad example because grid and SQL are typically going to get lower numbers. But either way, somebody had generated, or somebody had even messed with the server. Who knows? They just added users for some reason. You can't just do a user add on a system because you don't know what the next user and group ID is. So when you use a tool like Ansible, like I was just showing, and by the way, you can always go like this, Ansible user module. This is one of my favorite things is you can always go reference the modules here. And my favorite part about it is right here with the examples. So if I said, give me a user on my system and make sure that he has a specific, oh, look at all these things you can do. Look at all that. But I want to make sure that he's got a specific UID of 14,001. I think any of you can go grab this and do that, right? And by the way, there's the whole block. Boom. I say before anything else, I need to make sure that that user exists. The paste might not be very nice, but that's fine. Do got to line it all up. Right? And then now for that user, by the way, Ansible.builtin is the more correct way to do this nowadays. This is the way everything's going. Right? And you got to know which ones are built in and which ones come from other. I don't think that's because all the modules aren't shipped anymore like they used to be, so it's kind of like this. But anyways, let's say New Relic. And then comment could just be New Relic service or something like that. And you may have a thing in your company where you do like SVC_New Relic, and then this is like 14001, let's say. He doesn't belong to any groups by default. We'll just let him, but we could do a GID, I believe, as well of 14001, just so that's explicitly given. And then down here, the user owner of this group could be assigned. So UID could be, or owner could be New Relic or SVC New Relic. And but you couldn't have done that until you had that New Relic user. Does that make sense? And we want service New Relic. Yeah, with a specific UID. Now I can run that. But, oh, by the way, you can always just bang Ansible, and it'll give you the last command. But I don't think it was the last command. So let's just say bang 25. There you go. So it'll run the root deployer. Make that user. Oh, unless something's busted. Oh, I don't get a GID. That's fine. Whatever. Let's just DD. Boom. All right. Anyway, so boom. There we go. So now we've got a service New Relic user. We know that he's going to have the right UID. By the way, we could even do a test before that. But again, we get down in the weeds of all these things we can do. I'm convinced that, though, if you could do these basic labs, that you could do advanced stuff. All you have to do, for most engineers, I really do believe, I'm just showing you that you can do it, right? And then once you do it, you're like, oh, that's how that works. Oh, yeah, no, I don't even need you anymore. And you just run off and go do it. And I think that's how a lot of this is. Like, I just have to kind of light a fire, and then you guys are like, oh, That's all Ansible is. That's literally all this tool is. That's it. What I'm showing you right here is the whole tool. You set it up, you get it running, you get your inventory right, and then you just start building stuff that touches and do. Oh yeah. Well, I'm going to show you some more stuff. We're going to go to Jinja templates here in a second. I'm going to show you 2 ways that I've used Jinja very effectively in my career, and then that's JINJA2, which is Jinja 2, and then we'll go from there. What did I miss? Sorry, does anyone know a good group where? Central 7 server with collab for sync tax calendars. Oh yeah, no, I don't. Unfortunately know anything about that kind of stuff. I can't give any good help there. But if you ask that down in the Discord, I bet there's some good ones. Discord is free, and there's all kinds of things that get asked in Discord and answered by people because we have a good deep. I feel like we got a good deep roster now of a lot of people that are really doing a lot of Linux. So that's the people that we have in there are, we have almost 4,000 people in there. So somebody's probably going to have dealt with a problem similar to whatever you're dealing with. Oh, hold on, guys. I got to check something again real quick. It's like now I'm fanatically checking this thing. So, let's see over here. It's like a very interesting thing for me now. All right. Okay, so over here, what else do we have then? That's that whole lab. That lab was short. I was adding stuff to it to kind of give you guys a little more color commentary. Let's go to the next part of that lab is to actually deploy an application. So we could have continued on with that Service New Relic and kept kind of installing things. I'm going to go ahead and link this lab for people that want it. Oh, maybe I ran out of time on the other one. I will pin it. Unpin. Actually, I won't even pin it on the YouTube side. I'll just drop it down in the chat. If anybody wants to follow along, you guys can. Killer code is free. Doesn't cost you anything. Your team has decided they need a tool that they can use to control and operate the many servers you have in your environment. Boom. There you go. Fractal Cal. Yeah, you can ask me anything you want. Open source contribution. Absolutely. You've been tasked with evaluating Ansible. You are adding to your original deploy file and now want to execute the installer that's in that deploy.tar.gz. Make sure that the playbook runs to completion and sets the environment as you need it. Okay. So, tips, if you get stuck, there's an answers file already. So we can cat root hosts. We see our host file as we expect it. That's good. And then I come down here and I can start to deploy my deployer file. So let's vi root deploy.yaml. Oops. And this was everything from earlier right here. We have the 3 dashes across the top to denote the start of a YAML file, start of a deployer playbook. We're going against servers. We're gathering all the facts so that we can see this nice deploy thing. All right, good. So we pushed it over there, and now we're going to create a directory for us to untar it into. This is something that we had just done in the last lab messing around, but opt my app and the state is directory. So we did that. Then we can untar the deployer into there. So source opt deploy.tar.gz, and the destination will be opt/myapp. So it's going to untar it over there. And then we're going to make the installer script in there executable. So under opt myapp deploy deployer.sh, we're going to change the file mode to 0755, and that'll be executable then, right? And then we're going to run that deployer, and we're going to register a variable. So this is the first time you see a register in any of my labs. The register is going to take everything that comes out of that shell, and it's going to give it to us as a variable called installer_output. And then we're going to debug that variable just to see what the installer did in our environment. Want to upgrade the server to a new RHEL version, but I want to check alternatives. I would say if you're looking for a good alternative right now, Rocky is pretty good. I think I've been telling you guys that I've been deploying Rocky all over government systems the last few years. I have probably deployed close to maybe about 5,000 Rocky servers into actual government like production systems because I build mostly new clusters, guys. In case you didn't know, like I build mostly new high performance compute clusters, and a big one like Werewolf has been huge because you got XCAD and you got HPCM and you got these kind of niche ones that do some stuff like that. But Werewolf just works, man. Like it's a great cluster tool, and some of you guys that have been around have seen how we use it in the home lab. What the hell is this? Hold on. In the home lab, I don't even know how I got zoomed in like that. We use Werewolf to provide all of the resources for you guys that are doing the Linux sysadmin and the security courses, which are all free down in Discord in case anybody didn't know that. So yeah, I would highly suggest looking at Rocky because Rocky is also supported by CIQ, and it's pretty good. So something to think about. And you can have it supported, and there's all kinds of other good things. And I mean, also in one other, this is kind of me being kind of selfish. I also am I'm pretty available down in the Discord to help with a lot of stuff, and I'm pretty good with my support of that stuff as well. So we looked at our deployer. Let's hold on. Let's look one more time at this. We use the copy module. We understand how the copy module works. And it takes a source and destination and an optional checksum so that we know nobody's messed with our file. We use the file module, which takes a path and a state. If you don't give it a state, it'll just make that a file, and this will break all over the place. So, okay. We use the unarchive. Unarchive can decompress and untar files. It can also do it remotely or locally sourced. We're also then making something executable that in the default package is not executable. And then this is just a deployer.sh script that I wrote. It's like the dumbest little script. We'll look at it here in a second. But we made it executable because it's not packaged executable. And then we go ahead and run it. Get the value, and then we debug that value just to see how it ran on the system. This is the whole lab. But if you could do all of these tasks, you could deploy on any set of servers that you had. You could deploy from a script installer. You could deploy from, if you just had to unpackage in an environment and get a new set of executables, you could do that. You're doing what, if you ever go look at like advanced playbooks, 90% of what they're doing is right here. They're just bigger and longer, and they're doing more stuff. And sometimes they're doing some checks, and there's some conditions. We're going to get to that here in a little bit in the labs. But this is it right here. This is what we do. All right. So it's escape:/WQ. Instead of arguing about if it's all going to work, one test is worth 1,000 expert opinions. So we're just going to run it. Let's see if it works. Fractal Cow, you said I wanted to learn how to research open source. Some projects I spent hours just creating their dev environments. I give up implementation of solution. I am new to open source contribution and need to be less overwhelmed. All right, Fractal, let me show you, let me show you where I would go if I wanted to both be less overwhelmed and more overwhelmed at the same time. You're going to be like, what the hell is he talking about? Hold on, it'll make sense in a second. Tend to use standard outlines. Yes. So look at guys. This is really awesome. If you just looked at the debug there, this is what comes out. One of the most important things to me is the return code. But another one that is actually valuable is standard out or standard output as lines read with the new line characters not just being stuffed in one line. There's reasons to use each of these, but it's up to you how you use them. You also have the start and the end time and the original command, and then if changed was true. Now, changed being true is tricky because if you ever use a shell script, 100% of the time it will come back true as changed. And you say, why? It has to call it changed because Ansible loses control. Ansible is doing what I call firing a cannon into the night. Let me ask you this. Anybody here ever fired a cannon? Anybody here ever fired like large ordnance in the military or something? Or even if you've ever fired a gun, is there any way to unfire it? Not that we know of. I mean, that's a lot of pressure coming out of the end of something. Well, a cannon's the same way. When you fire a cannon, if you fire a cannon off into the night, did it land where it was supposed to? Did it splash down in the water? Did it hit an island? I don't know. It fired off into the night. When Ansible runs, this is actually an important thing to note. It's considered very bad practice to run shell commands inside of an Ansible playbook. And most people will tell you to never do it. And I'll say, just like you should never cross the street without looking both ways. But once you understand how to cross the street, and once you understand why you look both ways, because I don't want to get squished by a car or a truck, then I can cross the street whenever I want. Well, it's the same thing with Ansible. If I understand that Ansible loses control of a shell method that's called, always executes whatever is called there, so now that script needs to be idempotent as well, or it comes back and it will always be changed, that's fine. I do check commands guys, I have so many Ansible playbooks, like I just pull them up right now in our home lab, where I'm doing shell commands to just check things, and you say, but that's always going to come back as a change. I don't care. I don't care if I did it 1,000 times. All it's doing is validating something. I know that I'm not running the playbook to see how many things were changed or okay. I'm running the playbook to gather facts for my my report that I'm about to generate in Jinja, right? Which are the same things I was showing you guys, like when I do these reports back to here and Sandbox here, right? These reports that come out, these just go and check everything in our environment. And if any of our systems are ever unreachable, which by the way happens a lot during lab time, people are doing labs all the time right now. While we're talking, there's people connected into our labs. Sometimes servers go down, and then I got to go fix them in Rocky, right? Because for the most part, if a box reboots in Rocky, Rocky 1 and 5 were down for a little bit last week. Last week, maybe 2 weeks ago now. Yeah, it's 2 weeks ago now. And then I had to go fix them, right? Because normally a node will just come back up, but sometimes for some reason they're not as clean. But yeah, this is how I generate these reports. I go and I gather information, and then I dump it in. But again, it's one of these things where, it's a bit of a bad practice, but not if we understand why we do a thing. It becomes less of a bad practice, so something to think about. So just stop caring about change and care about. Yeah, Mint. So let me tell you, when I used to do, because I used to catch a lot of, I used to do Ansible deployments, and then I would catch stuff with a tool called VRO. This is like the limit of my professional JavaScript, was actually VRO used JavaScript. So I would check, and at the end of a playbook, I would call a playbook good as long as I had no unreachable and no failed. I did not care if it was okay or changed. Didn't care. Well, but plus it was also a new deploy. I was doing new deploys. And as long as I had no unreachable or failed, I went on to the next task out of VRO. Because VRO was sequentially calling different playbooks and different things that I had. This to be honest, this was before we got into Ansible Automation Platform heavy. Well, Ansible Tower at the time. But I used to just call against an Ansible server, and then it would run my stuff. And then actually Michael Pessa, who's one of our senior guys in our Discord, he's a Red Hat architect, by the way. He rewrote it to do all, once Tower came up, because I left the company for a while. When Tower would come up, he did it all through API calls. But it was all the same stuff that I had written that was deploying on and building and doing like logical volume management builds on the servers and stuff. There's all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Bar wired said I even changed from modules. The return code was weird and they didn't code it properly. Yeah. That's so. Yeah, core wired. I sometimes have to validate things by searching stuff. Like I'll search the variables. And by the way, also I don't do a lot of the reporting. Like none of my reporting type stuff happens here. It all happens in Jinja, which I'm going to show you guys here in a second. Actually, we're going to go to Jinja next. Cool. Yeah. Okay. So, manual verify. We can just manually verify that all that stuff's there. Yep. Oh, by the way, I said we'd go look at the script. So here's the script. Opt. My app. Was it my app? Deploy. The script is like the dumbest thing I've ever written. I would be deploying some stuff, sleep. I would be deploying some more stuff. That's literally all it does. And I did that so that you would have. Oh, here's what it does. It says I would be deploying some stuff. I would be deploying some more stuff. Maybe the playbook. It's actually interesting because I ran into this a lot in my career. If you ever work with Oracle, I don't know why this is. I don't. I'll tell you another one that's fun too. Oracle. When you deploy Oracle database on a Linux box, on a Red Hat box, so you do an Oracle database. I don't know why, but they have to execute it from their Oracle script, and that Oracle script has to have execute in temp/temp. And you say, how do you know that? Well, because I've hardened enough boxes with CIS and STIG benchmarks to know that in /temp you would always have no exec. You should never be able to execute anything out of temp. What are we? A bunch of, world writable. That's a world writable directory. Anybody can write in there, and they can put anything, and then you can execute it out of there on accident. No, you have to always disable that when you install an Oracle database on a server, because it puts files in there and then executes them out of there. And you go, why don't they just change? All my years of using Oracle, they never changed it. That's one. Another one that's interesting is if you ever compile GPFS, which is the, I think it's called the General Parallel File System or Global Parallel File System. I always forget what the actual name is. But GPFS from IBM is a big tool that we use for parallel file systems and high-performance compute. You cannot compile that on a box without K-shell. You say, you can't even run the script? Nope. Need K-shell. KSH. K-shell. Really? Yep. Got to put it on. What about all the other boxes? Nope. Once it's compiled, once you have it built and good for your kernel, you go put it wherever you want. But the original build scripts are all done in K-shell underneath. Yeah, you got it. So you're like, oh, I haven't run K-shell in years. So I'm going to tell you guys something funny, and I normally don't give people's exact names, but I'm going to give this guy's exact name to prove a point. One of my buddies, I bet to this day, I haven't talked to this guy since 2013, but he was a guy I used to work with at Lockheed Martin. He always used K-shell, all the time. Rest of us were on Bash or C-shell or T-shell. We even had T-shell in that environment. And he was always on KSH. And it's like, why are you always on KSH, Kurt Scott Hayes? Kurt Scott Hayes would never get off of KSH. He stayed on that shell as long as he could. He's probably still on it now because those are his initials. He will always be on KSH. And he actually had some really cool. He had a hand-coded HTML diagram. He had a hand-coded HTML of that gave bricks. Like you could click on the blocks of our data center and see the rack elevations. It was all hand-coded, guys, from the 90s. I was super. Of all the things I've been impressed with that people have coded by hand, was his block grid from the top of, because if you guys have ever worked in data center, it's A through Z, and then it starts counting A through AB, AC, right, and goes that way, and then down it's always numbered, right? That's all data center. All data centers 1 foot blocks. Well, for the most part, I guess all American data centers. Have I ever been in a data center outside the U.S.? I have not. So I can't say that everywhere, but in the U.S. it is. And ours, he had a block grid that he had hand-coded in HTML, probably generated it with Perl or something, but he had it, and then you could click on anything and it would pop up with a page of the elevation of the rack in that diagram. And it was all hand-coded. And you say, how do you know? Well, we were in an air-gapped environment, so one, it was all old tooling, and two, he had been maintaining it since the late 90s. Isn't that wild? So anyways, yeah. Yeah, so that was a fun one. But anyway, so that's our thing. Can we check it? Should go, and says, look at you learning Ansible, you solved the challenge. Really, when you look at what we're doing in Ansible here, I really care that as you're looking at these, that you're seeing a very, very simple pattern, that we can do very, very simple things. This was the original thing we did from the last lab, and we just slowly added, guys, it's super simple. Just slowly added more and more stuff. Have we execution blocks? Yeah, no, I haven't done. Oh, sorry, Fractal. I did not even show you the thing I meant to show you earlier. Hold on. What is it called? Where is here it is. This is both the who knows what I'm about to show them with CNCF. If you want to know one, because there's kind of two questions, Fractal, that I think you asked me. You asked, I want to be involved in things that are being worked on, but also I want to work on things that are big in the industry, right? This right here, this is a place that I would tell you these are like the movers and shakers in the cloud space right here. Application Helm. I've never even used Dapper, but it seems like Dapper is going to start being big. I have a CKA and a CKAD, and there's things here that I've never even seen before. Oh, look at some of the. I've literally never heard of some of these big ones. I've Argo and Flux, sure, but some of these, I literally never even touched them. But if you wanted to know good things that are supported or good things that you could get in on and have real world industry experience, these graduated ones are some of the ones that are they've got a lot of focus on the industry. And you would get to see, like, if you're just saying, well, Scott, I don't want to be on an open source project that's not having issues opened and having people work on. So I don't want to be involved in one of those. I want to be in one that's like more that. That's what I would tell you to go get involved with, is the CNCF, the landscape. This is a tremendous amount. I mean, you couldn't. I don't even think you'd find somebody who could name all these. But and I'd almost for sure guarantee you that you couldn't find somebody who could name all of them and then also what they do. By the way, Spiffy. Spiffy is key management, and this is specifically, we have a book on Spiffy from one of our guys. So look at the stars, contributors, how long's it been around. Spiffy is called Solving the Bottom Turtle. Sometimes it's a zero trust framework, right? So there's a book on it from one of the members of our community helped write the book, in fact. If Tani shows up. Yeah. Actually, I need to reach out to Pessa. Hold on, because I got to tell him he's got a funny opportunity. Hold on. Aw. Hold on. The wife sends cards to all the nieces and nephews, and one of our nieces just got her card, and I forgot the wife does this, but she goes to the bank and gets $2 bills. So our niece turned 4, so she got two $2 bills, and I got pictures of her smiling and stuff. Anyways, that's kind of fun. All right, but I'll have to tell the wife when, because she just took off. She's flying home right now. Yeah, hopefully that answers the question better, Fractal. I'm sorry for missing it earlier, but there's that. All right, I didn't miss it. I said something and I went off on a tangent, so I missed it. I am trying to get Pessa to talk. I don't know if I'm allowed to spill. Oh, shoot, it's been like months. He's got to have told people. So Pessa and his... I don't know if I can get Pessa's time. He may be dedicating it more to a small person. How's that? How's that without me saying exactly that? But it's been months since he and I talked, so I'm pretty... Well, we've talked, but I'm saying since we talked about that, so I'm pretty sure he's told everybody. But anyways, yeah, he's going to be busy probably with a smaller human, so... so there's that. They still have $2 at the bank. You can still go get $2 bills. Yeah, my wife goes and gets them in bulk, and then she gives them she does my wife loves doing stuff when so we have a lot of friends that are, the kids are coming up to being graduating, and I remember when the kids were all graduating 2020, it was 20. She gave two $20 bills for all the kids that graduated, and we had guys, we're talking this almost broke us. She's just giving all these $20 bills out, and I'm like, ah. And then 2021 was a 20, a 20, and a 1. And then 2022 was a 20 and a 20 and then a $2 bill. So yeah, that's her favorite thing, is to give stuff away. And before you guys think oh man, is his wife no, my wife actually, I didn't, man, you guys aren't going to believe this, but I could pull up the receipts to show you. My wife gets at least 2 cards a week from people. I didn't know people still sent cards before her and I got married many years back. But she gets at least 2 cards a week all the time from people, people she knows and people that still send mail. And actually, it's kind of nice because it's at least when I go and grab all the trash out of my freaking mailbox, because they love stuff. If you're not an American, just know that they just stuff so much trash in our mail. I don't even know why they do it. It literally goes right in. But at least I'm carrying something back for the family, right? So, is Werewolf like Pacemaker or more advanced? No, Pacemaker is a separate thing. In fact, we set up Pacemaker and CoroSync with our Werewolf instances, but it is not. Um, let me finish this Ansible stuff, and I am going to be doing a Werewolf presentation or a Werewolf write up and video one of these days. I'm just not around to it, but suffice it to say, Werewolf is a cluster manager. Werewolf in my home lab does this. I'll just show you real quick. In my home lab, here's a Werewolf server. He is get out of here, Ranger. Werewolf is running. He's running DHCP, TFTP, and NFS on him, and any node that comes up doesn't know who he is. So any node in my environment doesn't know who he is. He comes up. He asks DHCP, "Hey, who am I?" And via his MAC address, which has been tied to a node definition inside the system. Hold on, where's my... Here. I'll show you real quick here. Let's go out of here. WWCTL node list-a for like Rocky 1, right? So here's a Rocky 1 definition in my environment, right? So here's Rocky. Rocky 1 is this hardware address. So when he comes up, he gets identified in iPixie as Rocky 1, and he pulls the correct information for his profile, which is this profile here, and then he boots to that image. He boots. He gets an init RAM FS and a kernel, and he boots up. And then when we go into Rocky 1, he comes up as he runs tempfs locally, and then he's got all the information that makes him a this box. Let's check to see. Nobody's on him, so let's reboot him real quick. I'll just do this. This will be my quick tangent for the day. I have tangents everywhere, but let's go over to Rocky real quick, Rocky 1, and we're going to watch him boot. So now he just went down. He's going to call over to Werewolf server, which is the only DHCP in the environment on VLAN 1 in my home lab. And he's going to now, when he comes up, he's going to pull down all that information. I can also, while that's happening, over here, we can watch that happen. So right here, look, he's booting up, he's iPixieing. He says, "Who am I?" on the network. He gets a response back, and he says, "Hey, buddy, you're Rocky 1. I know that because your MAC address, right?" And then he pulls down his kernel image, and he pulls down his init RAM FS, which you can see happening over here on the Werewolf node, right? And then he's going to boot up, and he's just going to be, he's a stateless image. A stateless image is like a trap door. You ever seen like a cartoon where somebody steps on a trap door and it goes, comes back up? He's gone, but the trap door is the same, and it's like a parlor or something, but it goes like this, and it comes back, and all the stuff's still there. That's what I kind of think of like my Werewolf nodes, my stateless nodes. They go down, they come up clean. If I want to make a permanent change, I got to go make it against that container image. If I want to harden my boxes, I got to do it against the container image, and that's something that I kind of show you guys. But watch, he's going to boot. He's going to do, there's two things that Werewolf also provides him. There's a thing called a system overlay or system overlays. System overlays are one shot as the node first boots, so like SE Linux and all these other ones. And then there's runtime overlays, and runtime overlays are always happening every 10 minutes in my cluster where the nodes are configuring themselves and doing different stuff. So as a quick rundown, that's what Werewolf does. Werewolf and Pacemaker are completely different, but we do use Pacemaker and CoroSync for Werewolf so that we always have a Werewolf instance up in an environment. That's what my company kind of specializes in. In fact, we did so many deployments like that with Dell, my company Redline. We were doing that so much through Dell for different government customers that CIQ that runs Rocky and Werewolf reached out to us and said, "Hey, would you provide us those configs and maybe give some training to our customers? We'll send customers over to train you guys." So my company may be giving training on that. So it's actually one of the reasons I don't mind putting together like a Werewolf, like high level how we deploy it and stuff. But if it's like I can't do things that conflict with what my company's doing, right? So that's kind of that. But yeah, look, so this box is booted. It's almost back up right now. He's almost back up. When he's done right here, we're going to be able to come over here and SSH back into him. As soon as this drops into, so it's labeling for SE Linux, even though we have it in permissive mode. And as soon as that's done, then we will have our system back. and he'll be clean. Nothing. Just back to a base Rocky 9.5 box. Fractal Cal, yeah. If so, I'll show you. There's a few things about if you want to binge Ansible for people that want to get better at Ansible. Yeah, look, Rocky's back up. Rocky's up. It's clean. It's exactly the image of the original node right there. So yeah, that's how that runs in my. That's how we do it in the home lab environment here, for people that are wondering how like I provision those networks and give everybody access. Then bastions are what we're doing next week in the security engineering course. So bastions are fun. I've been building bastions for the government for a long time. I think they're fun. I think they're simple. Much like a lot of things are simple, I think they're simple and you can do them. All right, here's my answer, Fractal. Go to the Prolog Labs, go to Ansible, and I'm gonna tell you guys, I'm gonna tell you this just like anything. Hey SA, how's it going? If you go through all the Ansible and you're like, okay, I get Ansible, I'm pretty good at it. Then you go over to our Discord, and in here, I have in presentations, I think. I have a presentation, you just got to go back a little bit, where it was like the Socratic Ansible. So these are notes on, can I do these things in Ansible? So there's a whole bunch more. There's 217 more lines of, can I connect all servers and get their uptime? These are all, they go with the lab. So it almost could be like a quiz. But the reason it's Socratic is you're asking yourself question. What ad hoc commands did we do? What is the ISO 8601 timestamp? Can I connect and get only time facts? Can I, how did this lab build on the previous one? Can I, like, what do I understand about the system as I move through it, right? That's what I would do next. And then if you say, Scott, I need more, I do have a book on it, right? And the book, I always say do the book after you've done all the other stuff. And the book is on LeanPub, so it's like $20 or something. But I always tell people, go do all the other stuff first. And then if you're like, I need a little more, the only thing that the book then adds is like a little color commentary. And it gives you some additional questions to go kind of deep dive on some of the topics. That's all. But I think you could do a lot here without ever going into the book. I really do. Like, you could spend probably 20, 30 hours on Ansible before you ever bought anything for it for free right here. So, all right, speaking of that, let's go to the next one because we've deployed the app now. Let's do a Jinja template. And there's two ways I use Jinja templates. They're going to be these next two labs. I think this will be the last two labs we do. But we're going to deploy a Jinja template and go stamp it on a machine. That'll be this first one. And then this one, which is, I want to say this has probably been one of the most useful things in my career, is we're going to do a bunch of things and then we're going to stamp a report back to the main machine. This has helped me so much. As a quick example, when I'm patching like 1,000 servers on a Saturday night and I've got like 4 or 5 members of my team and I'm going to be the one kicking it off, and then as servers come back and don't respond, I'm going to kick them over to my different people on the team. One of the things that has happened, and this has literally happened to me before. We'd get to the end of it and we'd go, hey, those 5 servers never came back. Shoot, were they down at the beginning? Shoot, were those already decommissioned? Oh gosh, I don't even remember. Don't do that anymore. Now, I do pre-checks before, and I get a whole list of all those little happy asshole servers that aren't working already, and they go on a list. And then when I get to the end and there's 5 servers still down and there are 5 servers that were already down, I say, nope, closing out, we're done. I tell the bridge, we're done with our patching. Those 5 servers were already down. That can be a service ticket or something later. Why would you want people troubleshooting on a Saturday night, right? That kind of stuff. Anyways, all right, let's do it. Let's do some Jinja stuff. Here's the labs if anybody wants to do them with me. Oh gosh, man, I have so many things around patching that I do before I patch. In fact, one of you guys asked me last time, a while back when I mentioned that last time we were doing this, and in our Ansible code directory, I wrote up some of my checks. So anyways, you guys can go look in the Discord. Discord's free, right? That's my favorite thing about Discord is it's free. Let's go do some Ansible. So it says, you've been using Ansible and have decided to work with templating tool that comes with it. That's a tool called Jinja 2. You're going to use Jinja 2 to stamp when activities and deployments happen on your servers. So maybe we did that deploy earlier, but now we want to stamp some information with it so that when it comes up later, people are like, well, hey, that app doesn't work anymore. And you're like, well, it was deployed before you patched the kernel, and now it's a new version of the kernel. We gotta redeploy for the new kernel. This happens with like OFED drivers and GPFS and all kinds of things can break when somebody patches or changes server. So we want to know the exact state of the server when it was, so that we can exonerate ourselves or our process, right? That kind of stuff. Hey, UG, how's it going? We're just doing Ansible labs today and messing around a little bit. But your team also wants to verify that certain conditions exist when the deployments occur. You figure out how to use Jinja 2 for that task. That's what we're going to do. So this says create a Jinja 2 template called root Jinja 2 template to stamp values to each of the hosts as you execute a playbook. Okay. Then it says create a playbook called root template YAML. And then if you get stuck, you can just call them. We're just going to say we got stuck. And then we're going to go down here and look at our files. So we're going to cat root template. Actually, let's get root hosts. Root host file has not changed. Root template.yaml. This is how we're going to deploy, again, 3 dashes at the top, start of a YAML file. Start of a Jinja template push to all servers. There's our servers host group. Good. Vars, gather facts true, become false. Task is simply going to copy root template.j2 over to root template.text. That's all it's going to do in our environment. All right, so let's go look at what's in root template.text. Before I show you guys this, or J2, before I show you guys this, has anybody here ever done like an ad lib or a mad lib? Do you guys all know what those are? I say this sometimes and then I think, man, was that just a thing when I was a kid? UG, you said this one? Yeah, this was originally available, but also I can share this. If you guys have never seen this before, this is fun. I can share the session. I've already copied this, so I have a version of it. But I will share that. You'll have to pull it out manually and then drop it in your browser. But now you guys have access to drop in there, and you can modify it, and you can keep a saved copy of it yourself. But I don't. I already have a copy, so if anybody messes this drawing up, I don't care, right? I've already saved it to my machine, right? Boom. But you guys can join that now, and then you guys can draw on that drawing or whatever. All right. We'll let that go back to spinning over there. So ad libs, if you know what ad libs are, which they're funny, like your buddy's like, hey, give me a verb and give me a noun, and you give them like the verb is run and the noun is pickle or something, and then they go and they put all these funny little things in, and then at the end it's just this ridiculous story, and that's what ad libs and mad libs are, right? It's an adjective, and you give them like swimmingly, and they're like, that's a adverb, you know, and then now you're fist fighting. But anyway, so what I'm going to show you is this is very much like, to me, in my mind, a Jinja template is very much like an ad lib, right? I can give the date time dot date and Ansible date time dot time. If you guys were here earlier and we were looking at those variables, every single thing that you found in that setup. So remember this Ansible server, is it servers? Yeah, servers. -m setup. Every single thing in here. Look at this. There's whoops. Oh, you got to do -I. Got to use the right inventory file. Every single thing in here, like 16 pages per server. Every single thing in here you could stamp if you wanted. Do we want to use Ansible user space architecture x86-64? Boom, we could drop that in there. All we got to do is call it by its name and path. This happens to be at the top level, so Ansible virtualization role. If I wanted to know that this server was physical or not, I could use this variable right here to determine that. And then Ansible virtualization tech guest, we're using KubeVirt. So I can add this. Watch. Let's run the playbook real quick. So let's see it happen first. So Ansible. Oh, by the way, it's right here at the bottom. Let's just run it. Boom. Push it over. And then we can just check real quick, and we can see that it pushed, and on the control plane node, the host name was control plane, the system was Debian, and the processors were 1. On the node 01, it was node 01, Debian, and processors number 1. Okay, that's cool. Well, let's go VI now, that root template, and let's go add some more things that we want to know. Maybe we wanted to know for that one variable that we saw earlier. Did I not? I thought I had it saved in my buffer. Oh, I did not have it saved in my buffer. Okay. But the point is I can throw anything else in here that I want. Let's say... Let's go grab one that's fun. Yeah, so Ansible system vendor right here. KubeVirt. And then down here, I might say virtual, right? Now if I go push that again, right, and push it to all the nodes, it's going to have to change. So we'll see it changed. And then we go and we run that cat on the systems, and we'll see that value dropped in there. Now, this is kind of useful. We could also, by the way, from that last playbook when we were doing the deployer and we had the installer output as a set of variables, we could have called installer output and dropped it in here as well. So that's kind of useful. That's kind of a useful little way to do it. But really, I mean, if I just needed to know that like the processor was 1 and that affected whether or not I could, or how I ran it on the system or whatever, there's all this other kind of stuff. Oh, yeah, the tabs. So this is actually one of my favorite little things to show people, because when I used to work in data centers a lot, and I would work with setting up network operations centers for teams, I would use, I would put like a big 65-inch screen on a wall in front of your network operations people, and then I would build my playbook, or I would build my monitors, and the monitors would just rotate on here. Yeah, this is called Chrome Revolver tabs. This is just Chrome Revolver tabs. It is getting deprecated. My understanding is it's not being supported anymore. But yeah, all you do is just go get Revolver tabs as an extension on your browser. And it works fine. You can actually go in here, watch, I can turn it off. This is one of my favorite little things about this too. I can go into the extension. Here's it. I think it's going away, but this is an absolutely, Revolver tabs is an awesome extension for when it works. Let me turn it off and let me manage it real quick. No, I don't want to do that. It should be, options right here. What I wanted to show you is you can actually reload pages as they come up. Like if you had a page that was like a static page that somebody wrote in Python and you just had to like go statically refresh things, you can reload the pages if you want. The pages will automatically just pop up in here too. So I'm going to close this down and I'm just going to make a new tab. It will get whatever the default settings are. So like I use like a 10-second default. And then, yeah, and then it just loops through everything over here. Here's our Linux System Admin course, which is free. Here's our Security Engineering course, which is free. All you got to do is join our Discord, which is, free. And then, yeah, you can just go do any of that stuff. So, yeah, I just have that stuff up there to kind of show you guys what's going on in the environment and stuff. By the way, you guys could be drawing on that right now if you wanted to. You guys could be, I think there's 2 other people in there. But yeah, you can modify anything you want. You can save it on your own local machine. I have a copy of it already, so I don't care what you guys modify. Look at Ranger. That dog. I don't know if you guys can see him very well because he's kind of laid out, but he is out. He is conked out right now. That dog. All right, he's a good guard dog. But yeah, that's a browser thing. It's just Chrome tabs, Chrome Revolver, Revolver tabs. It works excellent. It's always been such a good tool, and yeah, I would put it up in a network operations center up on the wall in front of the NOC. So even late at night when they're doing whatever, I could have just little heads up displays like this of just what's going on in the environment for people. Yeah, and I've been doing that back since I was on all Nagios back in the day. So, yep. Super easy to do. Super, it's free, right? And then everything's just Chrome, and then you can set the browser when they hit the button to just pull everything up in the NOC, and it's super easy to do. So, yeah. I like when people ask me about that because that's one of those fun things. But yeah, if you've never seen it, it's just Revolver tabs. All right. I've hammered on that enough. That's the whole lab for this one. But that one is just, I want to stamp something over on a machine, right? I want to stamp, like I do 1,000 machines with a deploy, and I stamp it on each of them. I could put, the license key that I use. I could put the dev or the prod environment that I'm in. I could drop literally any value in here that I get out of the system or whatever, right? This is okay. This is a good way to use Ansible right here, and this is a good way to use Jinja templates. But now I'm going to show you the way that I've done. I mean, massive amount of stuff in my career has been You know, I mean, I already had a good engineering career, but this thing right here has really like, I have stuff that's running with Jinja like this that publishes to all like NOAA projects and all kinds of government stuff uses what I'm about to show you guys right here because this is just such a good way to do it. So, all right. So let's do the lab. Here's the lab if anybody wants to do it with me. Again, I'm going to tell you guys something that is already true, but is even more true. If you find anything on here that's useful to you and you're like, oh, can I steal it? I don't care. Take it. It's the only way to do it. So let's pull this up. Let's make this a little bigger. This is going to radically change what we just did. And we're only going to pull it back and stamp it as a report on this one server. But it's still just going to be Jinja templates. So you've been using Ansible, have decided to work with templating. You are going to use Jinja 2 to stamp a report back to your control plane node, letting you know how a run went on a bunch of individual servers. Okay? After you complete this testing, you expect to run this against hundreds of nodes and need to know the nodes that it did or didn't complete on. Very important. So let's cat our root hosts. Got them. And then let's go look at we've got a Jinja template and create a Jinja template to deploy the root text report upon execution of the playbook and then have it report back. Okay, so all these things are going to happen. Let's go look at this. And the start of it is pretty much the same. Let's clear this up. The start of it, if we go and look at the playbook, which is template.yaml, the playbook looks very similar to start. In fact, the top is exactly the same. But then we're just going to go get uptime on a server with the shell uptime command, and we're going to register uptime. So now that command uptime is going to register a bunch of variables like we saw in our deployer playbook before. All the things that happened when we ran the command uptime. Now, we're going to do a report with Jinja as a template, but now instead of going to all the nodes and stamping, we're going to run once and delegate to only this server. It's not going anywhere else. It's only this server. And then as we stamp it, we're going to stamp it with the date and time. So it's going to always be a new version every time we stamp it. Whereas if you saw on the last one, I kept stamping over the same file. That's fine. Now we're going to stamp a report every time my playbook is run. But this is where the magic happens right here. Yeah, delegate to is super useful because, yeah, I only want this to happen here because I want to bring everything back. Now, check this out. This is the magic. But before we get there, I'm gonna pull this up and then I'm gonna explain something to you guys here. There are a bunch of special variables in Ansible, and the special variables can be played with all kinds of different ways. I'm gonna link it to you guys here. This is also stuff that I think like, until somebody shows it to you, you were going to have to fumble around and find it. But there's a bunch of variables that always exist in Ansible. Ansible always has them in its little sack as it's going along. And two of the ones that I found very early on super useful were these ones right here. Ansible play hosts all, which is all the hosts that started at the starting line. And Ansible play hosts, which are all the ones that are current, but at the end, they're the ones that made it to the end. So you have a diff right here between all the play hosts that are at the end and all the ones at the beginning. So let me just, simple logic thing here. I'm not trying to trick you guys. Well, actually, hold on. Let's wait a minute and a half for commercial. We'll wait for the ads to be done. So smoke them if you got them. Take a drink of water, whatever. I'll give you guys a second. Yeah, it looks like a trick. Yeah. So check this out, right? Yeah, it's not a trick. It's a treat. That's actually funny. I'm not trying to trick anybody here. I'm just going to do a simple logic thing, which I think everybody's going to pass. But we're going to wait. We're going to wait 50 more seconds because we got 50 more seconds on ads. Well, hopefully I'm giving you guys some information that's good. Hopefully you guys jump down into the Discord. And the cool thing about Discord, guys, for people that aren't around and don't use it much, is it's more persistent than this. You can ask people questions. You can go hang out. We got one guy who hasn't left the Linux chat channel for like the last 2 weeks because he's looking for work, man. He's trying to make stuff happen. He's just been hanging out in that channel for like weeks. He literally has not left that channel. Day and night, he sleeps in that channel. And then he gets up and he keeps working. He does like project work and stuff, but he's trying to find like a job in tech. And yeah, that's kind of good. So all right, so let's go to yeah, he lives there now. That's exactly right. He lives in that channel. Hey, and I tell you guys, short of doing illegal stuff and short of like disrupting like the main events, I really don't care what you guys do in Discord. As long as you're not doing illegal stuff that's like breaking some international laws. Like I tell you guys, just don't burn the place down. Don't get us kicked out. Don't have us like show up one day and our Discord's just gone. Anything else I really don't care about in there. All right, we're back from break. We were waiting before I talked about this. Some of you guys have heard this before, and you're gonna be like, "Oh, Scott's back on the fucking steeplechase." But anyways, all right. I just real quick. Again, note: I'm not trying to trick anybody. Ansible Playhost all. Ansible Playhosts. If 1,000 nodes started, and then at the end you had 980 nodes, right? You had 1,000 nodes at the starting line, and only 980 at the end. What happened to those 20 in between? The answer is it doesn't actually matter. It just matters that they didn't make it to the end. But one of the things I always explain to you guys, have you guys ever seen a steeplechase? Does anybody here know what a steeplechase is? It's this race that still exists for some reason where people like jump a hurdle and land in a puddle of water. And I'm just telling you, go watch a steeplechase sometime. You will see people break their ankles, like ankles sticking out of the, like bones sticking out of the side of their leg and stuff, because they're like jumping this hurdle into like water. You can't jump over the water. It's like 30 feet. Like it's too much to hurdle and then not. And then like they're running in wet shoes. It's just one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen humans do. But it's an actual event in like the Olympics still. I think it's called the steeplechase. But anyways, where I'm going with that is you see people that start, but they don't finish. So let's get back to this real quick. And the start of this is just like before. We stamp at the top, date and time. What's going on? What validation of date and time do we have from the system? And then I loop over unreachable systems. For hosts in all the hosts that started. If the host is not in the ending line, if they didn't make it to the end, drop their name right here. So we loop over everybody that started. And if you're not at the ending line, you're one of those 20. And again, I asked the question in a weird way. I said, what happened to him? It doesn't matter what happened to him. I don't care if you made it 30% of the way in failed patching. I don't care if you made it 95% of the way. One of my engineers, one of my admins is now going to have to go check on you. Come on, pick him up by his hand and walk him the rest of the way. Something happened to this server. Now we have to go manually check it. This is also a big part of what I call painting with a wide brush. I want to make sure like 98% of my servers finish, and those last 2% are the ones we have to go spend time with, right? Then down here, we do something else. We say hosts that have been up longer than a day. And you might say, well, why would you ever want to check for something longer than a day? Well, if it's patching tonight, and patching was kernel patching, meaning a server should have rebooted, if any server has the word day in its uptime. By the way, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you ever do uptime on a server, if it's been up less than a day, it won't have the word day in its output. But if it does have the word day in its output, it's been up longer than a day, it didn't reboot last night in our last 4 hours of patching, somebody needs to go check on that server. So, you made it to the end, you weren't up here, but now you didn't get rebooted. Those are the two things I wanted to check here. Look how we did this. We did 4 hosts in Ansible Playhost All. We check all of them. But if the server busted in some way, it would not have this host variable uptime defined, and we could leave the block. By the way, there's a thing about Jinja 2. There's no real error handling in here. If you drop in here and some variable across all your 1,000 machines doesn't exist, it'll just break and you won't get a report. So what I do is I just check if the variable exists for the uptime, meaning you made it to that uptime section. And then I go look for if the word day is in host var's uptime. Host var's host. So for each host that we're looping over, the uptime.std out. And then I go drop it in there and say that node has not rebooted. That's it. That's all we do. Now I know all my servers that need to go be touched in some way because they broke. I know all the servers that do or don't have some values. By the way, guys, this is just one check that I wrote for this lab. I have hundreds of these checks that I do against systems and things like that and report out and all that kind of stuff. In fact, I'll pull you one up right now in the home lab. In our system here, where's our... That's the actual playbook. So the run is down in roles, daily, prolog, lab check, tasks, main.yaml. These are my checks, and then my actual the template. Here's my J2 check. So these are actual checks that write out to my system if nodes were unreachable, if they were had been reported as if they had not rebooted, and then logins to the servers in the last 24 hours. These are things that then get reported out to my system right here. Yeah, and co-wired, by the way, I tell you guys this. If you find anything here that looks useful, steal it. It's probably stolen when I got a hold of it. No, I'm just kidding. I did write all these myself, and this was something that I kind of found novel. But, man, if everybody just starts using it, I have this still running on tens of thousands of machines right here. These checks and stuff that come out clean. And, by the way, one of the reasons I write them like this is because only the ones that I care about pop up. If I don't care about them, if I don't want to see them, then it's not noise. Because one of the worst things you could possibly do is just drop a block of text into a Slack channel. That gets ignored immediately, or a Discord channel. That gets ignored immediately. But here, and this is the net output of ours, here, very easy to see. This is how these output, just like this. Super easy, super clean. You can look at it and go, system's good. Oh, Kafka's still down. Somebody will work on Kafka later. That's it. That's the whole. That's how we do it right there. So, all right. Anyway, so that's that. That's how that lab works. And then you can just manually make sure it gets pushed everywhere, and then you can go and see that the reports get stamped with the exact time, and then no unreachable systems and no hosts that have been up longer than a day. But then you say, wait a minute, Scott, can you prove that works? What if I VI root hosts and I go to like node 02? I know node 02 doesn't exist. It doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. Could we see? Well, we saw it broke there, but did it get written out in the report? That's what's important. Yep, node 021 couldn't get to him. He was at the starting line, guys. He doesn't exist, so he wasn't at the finishing line. Give me his info. Again, like I said, I don't know what happened in between the two. I can't tell you if he tripped on 1 or 7. There's probably some things we could do, guys, to make this more granular. But again, like I said, if I got 1,000 nodes, I just want to know the 3 nodes that aren't there. I'll go send one of the junior engineers while I drink my Monster. I was going to say coffee. I don't drink coffee, but like when I drink my Monster, I'll go send one of the junior engineers to figure out why those 3 machines are not up. But I'm terrible. All right. There you go. Yeah, good engineers copy best engineers. So that's actually true of writers too. Good engineers, good writers borrow, great writers steal. Right. So boom, there you go. All right, we are 2.5 hours in. I have done the first 8 of our Ansible labs. They just keep going. We do some API stuff. We do some Vault and some pushing and variables and stuff. The labs just kind of keep going. What I would tell you guys, I got to get off of here because the wife's coming home soon. She's on a flight right now. I'm going to go grab some drinks before she gets back. But keep working on this stuff. Ask questions down in the Discord of me and other people because we have good engineers there that are working on this kind of stuff. I'm probably going to drop off of here, but again, you guys are welcome to hang out. Let me do one more message of the Discord in case anybody wants to join that. There's all kinds of stuff to go hang out and do in there. So boom. Also, Amber, I apologize. I missed a lot of your stuff over on the or on the YouTube side of things, but you guys are all welcome to hang out down in there. And let me go to my little end of stream stuff. Let's go find somebody to raid on the Twitch side of things, and then on the YouTube side of things, I just appreciate you guys coming by, and we will do more stuff as we get further along here. Let me see if I can find who's on right now. Let's go raid Ross. Ross is working all day. He's being loud. Ross is great for that kind of stuff. But for the rest of you guys, I will see you later on during the week, and keep working on your courses if you are. And I appreciate you guys coming by. Take care.